Be ready with the blinking light? Okay, at this time I'd like to call a regular meeting to the Wallingford Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission to order. The date is March 1st, and the time is 7:02. You join me in pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Allie?
Eileen McKean.
Nick Kern.
Jim Vitale?
Deborah Phillips.
Michael Caruso.
Jeffrey Necchio.
Jim Heilman.
Erin O'Hare, Environmental Planner.
All right. Commissioners, as you recall, under consideration of minutes, last month I felt there was a major void in the minutes. Since then, our recording secretary has gone over the video and pulled down the pertinent information that seemed to be missing that I thought should be in there. So Erin has gone over and she passed out tonight word for what was in the video, word for word, and we just want to insert it into page 9, I believe, Erin. Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't know if your microphone is on, Erin.
Well, it has a red dot. Maybe I'm not. There you go. There you
Yes.
go.
There we go. Super.
There you go.
Okay. So if you make a motion to approve the minutes for the January 4th meeting, you have to include the pages that is added between 9 and 10. So is there any other comments from the commissioner regarding the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion or denial of approval of the minutes. Motion to approve or deny the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of January 4th, 2023 be approved as submitted with the corrections that are inserted on between page 9 and 10.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Call for a vote. Nick?
Yes.
Debbie?
Yes.
Mike?
Abstain.
Jeff?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now, regular meeting of February 1st. Again, is there any corrections, omissions to the minutes of February 1st meeting? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny the motion, the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of February 1st, 2023 be accepted as submitted.
Okay. Motion made, seconded.
Second.
Any discussion? Call for a vote. Nick?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Now, the next item on the agenda is the public hearing, but tonight we've got a pretty full staff, so commissioners. So all of the primary commissioners are here tonight, so no alternates are necessary. So the voting members on the whole agenda will be Deb Phillips, Nick Kern, Jeff Nyko, Mike Caruso, and myself. Now that's interesting. Erin. Go ahead. Okay. Debbie and I believe, are excusing ourselves for the public hearing at Choate School.
Yes.
Do 2 alternates replace us?
Yes.
Okay.
Or
One would be Allie, and one would be Jim.
yes. Well, or technically Nick is replacing you, is moving into your spot, and he'll be acting as chair. But yes, Jim and
What difference does that make? I mean, we got to add a Democrat and a Republican.
sounds
the
good to
commission.
me.
Whatever chair they sit in. All right. So at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting. You all set? You all set? this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Nick Kern, and going to excuse myself, and I think Debbie the same.
Yes, I will recuse myself
And
also.
We'll go over in the boss's chair over there.
Ready, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we're ready if you are. State your name for the record, please.
Certainly. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, for your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. I'm an attorney with the Senaviva Law Firm, 721 Broad Street in Meriden. I represent the owner and applicant. With me in the audience is Patrick Corbin, who's the CFO of Choate Rosemary Hall. Also up at the easel is Brian Kay, a landscape architect with SLR. And to my left is Darren Overton, team engineer from SLR. In the audience is Megan Raymond, who is the professional soil scientist, professional wetlands scientist, also from SLR. As you recall, I'm sure, we made our main presentation last month to construct a new 14,000 square foot admissions building together with an underground parking garage along the northeast corner of North Elm and Christian. The public hearing was continued until tonight in order that the applicant and the environmental planner might continue our interaction so as to resolve any outstanding issues that were raised at the February 1st meeting, public hearing. Over the last 28 days, the last month, the applicant and the environmental planner have met several times, as she indicates in her environmental planner's report from the 24th and also from today. It was the intent to reach an accord on the issues that were outstanding, try to come to a place where the planner, the environmental planner, could recommend approval, as she does in this report. The applicant has provided answers, responses, which are in your packet, to the legitimate questions raised by staff and letters from the public. If you have any questions on that, we're prepared to answer those. I think the answers were comprehensive and provided before, I think, February 24th. The applicant has also revised its stormwater management plan as requested during the last meeting and during our meetings with the environmental planner. That came in also in your packet. That's dated February 21st, 2023. I know at the last meeting the Commission and the environmental planner was awaiting a memorandum from the town engineer. There had been a correspondence from the environmental planner to the town engineer asking her for some additional information relative to our plan and our reports. And I'm sure, as you know, you've received that. The town engineer did send back her review of the plans. It was submitted, again, as part of your packet, as I understand it. That was received by the environmental planner on February 24th. Her responses are self-explanatory. They were positive, as you note from probably reading it, hopefully. She made comments with respect to the applicant's plan addressing the improvement of the quality of stormwater runoff, and also noted that the plan was designed so as not to exacerbate downstream flooding conditions. She noted particularly the removal of the existing impervious parking spaces, which is part of our plan application, along Gunpowder Creek Road would have a positive effect on stormwater runoff quality. So those were in her, in the town planner's, town engineer's response. The applicant has provided information which we'll go through tonight. It's in also submission to you. It went to the planner. I think she's handed out the environmental planner. That was what other design criteria were contemplated, what other alternatives were contemplated prior to filing the application that's before you, and why were they rejected? And obviously, other criteria were considered, other alternatives considered, they weren't as good. We wanted to make sure we came to you with the best plan of all the alternatives considered. For example, we considered leaving the parking spaces in place along Gunpowder Creek Road, but again, I think it's clear from the town engineer's report and from everything that you've seen in our presentation that there's a benefit to removing those, so that alternative was abandoned or rejected. We thought about constructing a surface-level parking lot abutting the new admissions building. Again, that would have more of a deleterious effect on creating additional impervious area, and Choate Rosemary Hall has gone to the additional expense of should it be approved, constructing a underground parking lot. We had initially developed a plan without the rain garden concept from the west side of the new building. That's been added. We're going to talk a little bit about how that also not only provides an attractive rain garden in that location, but also provides some infiltration. You may remember, Mr. Chairman, last time I think you asked the question about what sort of infiltration is there in the detention basin and the rain gardens, and we've provided that information in the last 28 days. We'll go through that with you tonight. All of which was very positive, and yet even with those positive results, there was no modification to the stormwater design because we took 0 as the infiltration rate when we designed, and so it'll work even better than anticipated because of the substantial infiltration rates in both the detention basin and the vicinity of the rain garden. We reviewed with your staff that green lawn area over the garage. I think we did a good job last month explaining that this was sort of a unique lawn area, if you will, over the garage. It was called a green roof, but I think Brian made a informative presentation about the distinction between the more typical green roof, which is a couple of inches of soil, and the distinction of what is contemplated here, which is, we can go through that again if need be, but of course it was designed to be constructed with 12 to 24 inches of soil before hitting any of the roof materials. We also rejected the prospect of designing the plan and have the stormwater discharge directly into the watercourse. We made that, we didn't consider that as a positive alternative, so we came up with a plan that's submitted to you tonight. Lastly, which we're going to talk about tonight, there was discussion or some suggestion about doing a riparian enhancement buffer. That was mentioned by Commissioner McKeon, I think, at the last meeting. We've discussed that with the environmental planner, and we have something more of a, I'll call it a hybrid to that idea, something that we believe will be even more effective as those can be. We'll address that for your understanding. It was a suggestion that came from the environmental planner, and we're prepared to comply with that suggestion. We also, we modified the construction entrance pad on Christian Street with additional E&S controls, and that was in response, I think, to a comment from one of the members of the public, and it seemed to provide some benefit to the overall plan. So it's been a productive, I think, 28 days, Mr. Chairman. Met several times. Your environmental planner did give us hours of time to review everything with her. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Kay.
Hello, Brian Kay, landscape architect with SLR. I can reorient you and then kind of take you through those 5 or so items that are new tonight. Admissions building here, North Elm Street, Christian Street, the site generally downhill, going this direction, eventually getting to the creek. The rain garden we talk about out front is right here. The stormwater basin is right here. And what's highlighted down here are the parking spaces being removed adjacent to the creek. So the first item we wanted to touch on was the permeability testing we did. We did that 2 weeks ago. As you know, roof runoff is going to go into this smaller rain garden out front, then make its way here. As we talked about last time, no infiltration was taken. The results of that test have proven that this rain garden here can allow for up to 12 inches an hour of infiltration. And then the larger basin can support 3 inches an hour. So that just kind of goes into proving the fact that how things are sized now, all those additional infiltration rates allow for additional capacity as it's designed, since those weren't taken into account. Next question we had was, how does the green roof promote infiltration? And it really happens in 3 ways. In a smaller storm, the profile, which ranges from 12 to actually 38 inches, actually just holds and retains that volume of rain. In a little bit larger rain event, when you're starting to get surface runoff, the runoff will come down over the hill here and actually be able to infiltrate into the football field. If any stormwater runs off to the left here, it goes into an adjacent lawn area. It appears right now that there's a cutoff line, but really this lawn surface flows right into the existing lawn as it does now. So that's another way we're kind of infiltrating in a medium-sized event. In a larger storm event, when over time, as the water goes through this profile, it eventually hits our under drains. Those under drains then take the water to the stormwater basin, where we've learned it can take up 3 inches an hour of infiltration. So then, as that ponds up, it eventually ends up in the creek here. But that's how we're further explaining how the green roof is going to work. Dennis kind of went through our alternative designs considered. Surface parking lot, we went with this. I'm not going to reiterate what he said. The construction entrance he talks about on Christian Street is right here. That was proposed to be an exit option, another option to what we previously have shown on North Elm. I can just show you this other diagram. Just additionally highlighting our rain gardens, our bioretention basin. And then lastly, we were asked to respond to the suggested condition of approval of the riparian corridor. We came up with an idea that's in your package. It's basically creating a check dam and some kind of stabilization along the Gunpowder Creek portion. But it's an option that we wanted to at least respond to and consider if that works for you guys. In closing, I overall think this project is going to do a great job of improving stormwater quality. Peak flows are reduced as part of this project, and hopefully we've been able to answer all the questions along the way of staff, working with the town engineer and Aaron. And if you have any more questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Myself, Darren, Dennis, any of us. Thanks.
Dennis, that information that Aaron just handed out to you, you've had time to review it?
She was kind enough to give me a call today. I knew it was coming. I didn't know the amount of the bond, but I knew that the bond was being suggested as a condition of approval. I don't have a problem with it. I know historically in applications that I've been before this commission, there's been a concern about the fact that, there's a bond here, then there's a bond typically at P&Z, should we get to that next level. But I do understand that this is a rather, it's a reasonable bond, and it's really designed to cover erosion control plan, as she points out in her memo. So my client and I have no problem with that condition.
Okay. Commissioners, does anybody have any questions? Jim?
One concern that it's not a concern so much as a point of interest. In the underground parking, is there any means by which you drain that? And if so, where does the drainage go? I mean, cars come in with a lot of salt and things like that in the winter with snowpack and whatnot, and they park underground. Is that ever flushed out or cleaned out, or what do you do for drainage? Which is a concern, and the only concern I would have with that would be, would you be allowing cars that are electric to park underneath that facility? The reason being, it's well known that fires with electric cars can't really be put out, and that ties to my concern of what you do with drainage in that underground facility. Should that rise, where would that water end up? That's the concern connected to the drainage.
I can answer that. For the record, Darren Overton from SLR Consulting. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. I would have been here at your last meeting. However, I had a conflict with another public hearing that had already been opened, so I think you probably remember that Tom Daly was here. But I've been the principal design engineer on the project. It's interesting that you bring that up because we had a similar conversation about a month ago with the mechanical engineers that are involved in the project. While we design the site plan and the exterior part of it, the building and the drainage and the sanitary and everything that's in the building is controlled by them. We did have a conversation with them about the sprinklering of the building, and I believe there is consideration for EV charging within the parking garage. So then the question came up about if there were an EV fire and you have sprinklers in there, how you deal with that. I think that's something that the National Fire Code is starting to deal with. I'm not sure how that's going to be dealt with in the building, but I can assure you that the drains, any drains in the building would be tied into the sanitary sewer and not into the drainage. I believe that's required by building code. Again, the building is not part of our purview, but that's how I understand it. It is handled. And because we have accommodated no provision for any floor drains in the garage to drain into our stormwater management system.
Good, thank you.
You're all set? You have any questions?
We're getting more information about the,
If you could speak up, please.
we're getting more information about your stabilization, the bank stabilization at Gunpowder Creek?
We're happy to answer any questions. We wanted to make clear that it was, and just for procedural purposes, that when we met with the environmental planner to discuss a potential riparian corridor, there was a suggestion that she made about the installation of a check dam, which is a meritorious suggestion. So we took that directive from your environmental planner and then came up with this plan, so it's responsive to those concerns and the ones that were raised by you earlier. You know, we can talk about the nature of it. It's really, I think it's designed to
Yeah, I could take it. So,
go ahead.
so the idea of that initial check dam that's shown on that plan is just to slow the flows that are coming right out of those pipes as they exist today. You know, as Erin was out there, she observed some minor channeling in a couple spots. So we talked with her about a couple stabilization techniques further down along the bank. So we felt that was a good way to manage what she had seen out there, and wanted to bring it up as a suggestion tonight and present and at least respond to that comment from last time.
So are you, this theoretically would be a condition of approval as this plan stands, but you are planning something more in the future that may be outside of this approval? Has there been any talk of that? I mean, look at this photo. That is a naked woman laying there across this field. She doesn't look like a stream anymore. There's such a long history involved in this waterway. You know, it existed. I had this discussion at Christmas with my sister because she came up with, hey, did you know there's a brownstone quarry on Wharton Brook? And I'm like, you sure that wasn't basalt for gunpowder? And she's like, she looks up on Google, who even knew basalt was used in gunpowder? Apparently I did. You know, George Washington came here and made his impassioned speech on the front lawn of the Royce House, not to just recruit soldiers for the Revolution, but he came here to buy gunpowder that was made from basalt from this creek. So to see it this way, have seen it this way for so long is just offensive to my eye. But, you know, a little is better than nothing. So, you know, I'd just like to see more.
Understood.
I got a couple questions. The sidewalk that you're going to propose to put in, is that going to be a concrete sidewalk? Will be maintained?
It's going to be a bituminous, an asphalt sidewalk.
Asphalt?
Yeah.
And what's the width of it? If you go by scale, is that going to be a 5 or 6 foot,
It's going to be an 8-foot wide sidewalk.
8 foot wide?
If you could all speak up, please.
Yes, it's going to be an 8-foot wide sidewalk.
So it's going to be for vehicles? Sidewalk will be used for vehicles?
Not for vehicles. It's more to accommodate a couple students walking together. You know, honestly, as we've studied sidewalks on campus, we have seen kids even going outside the limits of the 8-foot sidewalk. And, you know, this building is going to be the primary source of some campus tours. So at least coming right outside the building and kind of getting on a campus tour, we felt an 8-foot sidewalk is best. It matches what's happening on campus now.
All right, so your roof runoff is going to come off the roof and come down, and it's going to catch in a pocket in front of the building before it goes across the sidewalk? And what do you figure is going to happen when that peaks, it fills up, and then it runs off over the sidewalk? Who's going to maintain that part?
So that rain garden in the front, once it gets to a certain elevation, there's an overflow drain pipe that the water is going to go into, and then that'll carry it down to the stormwater basin, the larger one in blue. So it can only hit a certain level before spilling out and going into the larger basin. So there should really be no interaction or overflow of the rain garden onto sidewalks.
Okay. Now, below the sidewalk, you have a field. That field treated for the use? There's chemicals put down on it?
I can't speak to exactly what's put down, but
we're talking about stormwater quality, and I'm concerned that the runoff from that field is going to tangle with your stormwater that's running down into Smoke Powder Creek. And, you know, you can't tell me the quality of that water is going to be good if you've got fertilizers or anti-crabgrass spray on it, or whatever you may have on it. So my question is, how are you going to prevent the tangling of the both? Is the soil pervious enough that it's going to soak into the ground? Or they're going to put applications down and then we have to worry about?
yeah, so there's a couple things. So at least we've learned that the basin, moderately close to the field, has a permeability rate of 3 inches per hour. So it's also pretty flat, being a football field, so hopefully we will get some infiltration there. But even as it exists today, with the removal of those parking spaces and turning them to lawn, you kind of have a depression if the stormwater does end up running off that hill. We now have an additional 20 feet or so of landscaping and lawn area. You know, that used to just go into the drains that there and then right into the river. So I think this is overall an improvement, and it has to travel quite a ways to get there. So
the grass strip on the bottom of the print up there is going to be, you're going to eliminate all asphalt? When I say all, I mean everything, parking spaces and the throughway?
the throughway is going to remain. The parking space will go away.
So then cars will come in and park on the throughway to go to the game or whatever. If the parking garage ends up being full or there's events going on down below, you're going to have that throughway is going to be packed with cars. So we're not gaining anything here by having that throughway there.
So the throughway is maintained for fire access in and around campus. It's really not the intent to have cars park there. There's considerations of us even putting safety bollards at the entrance of that to prohibit cars from going in there. I mean, we're taking away 60 spaces and putting 70 or so in the garage, and you know, I'd say Choate will find other places if there are large events to park.
But do you understand that those 60 spaces you're taking away entertain what else is going on to the west, I mean to the east of the field? You know, you're going to leave the thruway there, but then those 60 spaces, people parked there and went to the left, went up on the, you know, the fields up on the other side of the, or down around the lower plateau there. I know my children both played in that lower field if it was dry enough, because there was always, we had a rain a couple days before, they had paddles on to run. So I'm just concerned that we're not really gaining anything here. You're taking away 60 spaces and we're giving you 70 spaces in the parking garage, but how many people are going to park in the parking garage to walk all the way across Choate to the other side of the field where they originally they were parking down below? I mean, when they have their soccer games and the town does their soccer tournaments, the place is packed bumper to bumper. So I don't think we're really gaining anything here by you taking away 60 spaces, and you're saying you're going to put ballards up. What about the people that go to the east? Where are they going to park?
Well, again, understand we're providing new parking spaces in excess of those being taken away, so that if the 60 spaces are used today, there's 70 to be used tomorrow should this be approved.
So when I invite you for the game next October, you're going to park under the parking garage and walk all the way down across the field to the east side to watch my children play soccer? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what's contemplated by Choate Rosemary Hall. Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm looking at the town engineer's report that she prepared on February 24th. She talks about the fact that removing those parking spaces along Gunpowder Creek Road, recognizing that the road itself doesn't get removed, but the relocation or removal, rather, of the parking will have a positive effect on stormwater runoff quality, as the first flush runoff will no longer be picking up oil and debris from vehicles. So, you know, it's her opinion, professional opinion, that there is a benefit to this. I think, you know, from our perspective, having that additional 19 or 20 feet of now new lawn area as opposed to the impervious area before is a benefit. All of that before the water hits the creek.
Now, in that 20 feet of green grass area, you gave us this print. Is these catch waters going to be in that 20 feet of grassy area you're talking about? You came with us this tonight, gave this tonight to us, something you want to do with stop dams and so incorporated in that 20 feet of grassy area, you're going to have these drainage swales running down through it?
No, that's what's the diagram in front of you is actually to the lower left of the screen where the creek daylights. That's where the suggested riparian improvements are proposed. It's further to the left, just off the page.
So it's going to be down there where the maintenance or service building is?
In between where we're talking. Yeah, in between the athletic fields, in between the other football field and the baseball field.
Okay. That's all I had. If nobody else on the commission has any questions, Aaron, do you have any questions before I open it up to the public?
Yes, not questions so much. First bookkeeping and then a few comments. On the bookkeeping line, I just wanted to run through let's see, an extension was granted by the applicant at the February 1st, which brings us to March 1st today, and then we are out of extensions for this public hearing, so there will be action tonight expected. I did send a memorandum to the town engineer, as been mentioned, on February 16th, and then February 17th met with the Choate folks, the project team extensively. And then on February 22nd, the applicant submitted a bunch of documents. It was, let me run through them. They weren't, some of these weren't mentioned tonight. One yet tonight. The wetlands letter from the wetland scientist, a revised letter dated February 21st, responses to comments from SLR, revised stormwater management maintenance plan, document revised, just a few things tweaked in there, and a cross-section of the Center Street Bridge showing the opening of the bridge, and also a copy of the FEMA floodplain map. I'm going to come back to that. Well, I'll come back to it right now, because today they submitted revised copies of that, which I laid out tonight. I would like Brian to talk about why he submitted them at all, but they're not revised appreciably. I just asked for him to do a citation. Where did you get this image of the bridge? Where is this information from? And maybe there was more explanatory information added to that. But I think right now it might be good if Brian talks a little bit about the nature of those two diagrams that were handed out. And why they're important, why they were important to be included.
Right. So the first one I'll flip to is the FEMA profile that looks like this. So what I'm trying to highlight there, as we talk about flooding in Gunpowder Creek, from this map, I'm trying to show a backwater condition happening, and that backwater conditioning is happening, what's apparent at the East Center Street Bridge. All my arrows on the left side are pointing to the bridge, which is shown on there. And then the other two arrows are pointing to what's located as the bottom of the stream, and then the storm events up above it. So the fact that those don't align shows that the water is kind of backing up. You know, if there was no backup, it'd follow the angle of the stream bank bottom. So when you see something like this, I just wanted to point out, you know, when we make statements like, you know, we feel flooding here happens caused from a backwater condition, this is where we're getting that data from. So it's really just an explanation to you where we got that from. So, you know, as a ripple effect from that, when we say the bridge is causing the backwater condition, in working with the town engineer, we come to realize the bridge got rebuilt a couple years ago. So on page, I guess 3 or 2, it shows the new bridge plan. And I just want to bring to your attention, you know, that the old opening was 20 feet, now it's 32 feet wide, and raised a bit. So those profile maps that I showed earlier haven't been updated based on this bridge that I'm showing. So, you know, maybe some of the backwater condition has been alleviated by this. So this was just, you know, in our discussions with the town engineer, with Aaron, about why flooding occurs in Gunpowder Creek, these were some of the results. So now you know.
So you're, excuse me, you're not telling us you fixed it, or the Center Street Bridge has been repaired to fix this. We had a resident last month that complained about her backyard floods. Is this coherent to what she brought up about because the water's backing up in her backyard? You're saying now that this shouldn't happen?
Her address was actually on North Elm, farther up, like toward Hill House, north of this site, north of the new admissions building site.
You're going south, we're going north.
Right.
It was two different, those were two different topics. I wasn't under the understanding that anybody had said that the new bridge on Center Street was causing any problems rather than alleviating problems, but there was a lot of bank work in that general area behind the gas station right there that changed the course of the river, changed the bank of the river quite substantially.
For the record, Darren Overton from SLR. The floodplain maps only show the floodplain associated with Wharton Brook and Gunpowder Creek up to about where the pipe daylights near where this project is proposed. Mm-hmm. So there's no floodplain that's shown that extends further up Gunpowder Creek or anywhere up against North Elm Street. So there's no FEMA map floodplain in that area. That's not to say that people don't see elevated water conditions in Gunpowder Creek that goes north. It's just there's no mapped FEMA floodplain associated with that.
what we're trying to determine here is, are you going to make it worse for this particular resident that has a water problem to the north by adding your water to the creek?
So our storm drainage overflow ties into the conduit that discharges at that opening in Gunpowder Creek, where we're proposing the check dam and the riparian improvements. So we have no stormwater that get drained north of that area. And our analysis shows we provided the stormwater basins in order to provide storage to not have an increase in runoff. So what the analysis shows is that we don't have an impact on the floodplain at all. We have managed the stormwater in such a way that we actually have a small decrease in the peak rates of runoff. So we would have no impact to the downstream condition that we drain to, but certainly no impact upstream of us.
Okay.
So, so if I could continue on the submissions. All right, so, actually, I'm going to pause there just to circle back to something you just said, Darren. I understand you're meeting the peak flow rate requirements. However, isn't more volume of water being put into Gunpowder Creek overall from the project? As a consequence of the project?
We didn't analyze volume.
Yes. But isn't it, in general, isn't that a general factor of development?
We didn't analyze it, and we didn't design to mitigate volume. So I think one could suggest that there's a potential increase in volume, but I speak to what we analyze and what we know as facts, and we didn't analyze it, so I can't distinctively determine whether there is an increase or not and how much that would be.
Okay, but you state as a fact that the project is not going to have any effect on Gunpowder Creek because you're meeting the peak flows. Well, but it will have an impact in terms of volume, but and it's true, we don't regulate volume in Connecticut. They do in New York, where I used to work. It was done 30 years ago, but they don't here. So I'm just pointing that out, that it's not no impact. There's more volume, but it's true, we don't regulate it. That's true. So I'm not saying that your work was deficient in any way, no, but it is more volume to the river, to the creek.
I would say with regard to that, volume's only a concern as time is applied to it. And that factor is what's dealt with in the surface area drainage flood concerns that they engineer for. You can take any volume, separate it in time. It's like saying how much paint can you spread on a wall. Depends on how thin you spread it. So I can understand why you wouldn't be engineering for volume unless it was somehow dimensionally tied to time. So the only way that's done is through the surface areas that you calculate with, from my perspective.
So anytime you change the land cover on a property, you change the runoff characteristics. We're not arguing and saying that we're not. What we look at, particularly with the stormwater discharge, it's going to drain into some watercourse or wetland, was whether we have an adverse impact. You could argue that there is an increase in volume. Is that a negative impact? I would argue that it's not. Depending on the situation, the longer duration of flows in the stream could be a benefit to the receiving wetlands. There's definitely a change there, and because we don't normally analyze volume, we don't analyze the impact.
How do we feel comfortable walking away here tonight with either denying or approving of this application if there's already a problem out there and you can't tell us whether you're going to add to it? I mean, I believe that's why you're in front of us, to correct it. There's already a problem out there with flooding. There's times that they shut down the fields because they're underwater. So not that this project's going to add to that, but how do you help resolve the problem that's there already?
Flooding is caused by peak flows, and we've analyzed the peak flows as is required under the town regulations and normal engineering practice and the state stormwater water quality design manual. We've followed all those requirements, and it's the peak flow that affects flooding. So the fact that we have analyzed and mitigated for that, we can say that we're not going to have an adverse impact on flooding. In fact, we've reduced flows. You could argue there's a small benefit to flooding downstream of the area because we know there is a FEMA mapped floodplain there. Volume does not adversely affect flooding conditions. It's the peak flows that are what's analyzed for the FEMA mapping and flooding.
All development increases volume of water. We don't regulate it in Connecticut. I don't know why we don't, but we don't. So that's okay. And we're going to move forward with this app. I suggest we move forward with it. I'm not going to hold it up on this point, but just logic says if you keep over time putting more and more water into a system, it reaches a point of capacity. That's just logic, right?
Yeah, and let me address that logic, if I may. There has to be an increase of volume. The engineering is to prevent that increase of volume from doing damage via erosion or flooding. What they end up doing in their calculations is they attenuate that water for a longer period of time. Granted, volume has increased, but by retaining it, as been done by the engineering, they prevent the flooding conditions and they prevent the erosion condition. That solved the problem. In addition to that, when it comes to wetland concerns, wetlands want water. It's the most important thing for them. So what engineering has done in this particular case is to provide the necessities for the wetland corridors for a longer period of time without the possibility of damage due to lack of control, lack of attenuation. So I think, yeah, the volume does increase, but the engineering controls that, mitigates it, and allows things to move.
And I would just add to that, the soil testing that we did and the high infiltration rates that we found, the fact that we have the collection areas for the roof leader with the swale out front and the bioretention in the basin as well, we are mimicking some of the infiltration properties that exist out there now as the lawn. So we're taking that impervious area and we're allowing it to run back through vegetated areas and be able to infiltrate back in the ground. You can't manage volume by just storing it unless you're going to store it and never discharge it. The best way to manage volume increases is to allow for infiltration, and we've done that. And so that you could argue that some of the mitigation that we've provided in providing for the natural infiltration into the ground is going to offset some of that increase in volume that we see. But again, I can't say definitively what the balance is there, but we have made every effort to mimic the existing watersheds and the existing runoff conditions on the site to the extent possible, taking into consideration that we also want to recharge water into the ground as base flow to feed into Gunpowder Creek, and have managed the surface peak rates of runoff in order to, I definitively say, and you don't have to believe me because your town engineer has provided some feedback on it, that we're not going to adversely affect the floodplain downstream and exacerbate flooding in any way based on the stormwater management we've provided.
I think it would be good too, a possibility is to read into the record the engineering report, especially bullet 2, in which they talk about the peak flow attenuation, which is really the discussion we are now having. And the engineer, I think, says it quite clearly, the importance of it and how it affects this project.
Would you like me to read it?
I think it'd be good, yeah.
Okay. This is bullet point number 2 in the town engineer's memo to the environmental planner dated February 24th, and she says, peak flow attenuation is required to not exacerbate downstream flooding conditions. The general stormwater management concept is acceptable as the, meaning in this project, is acceptable as the design reduces peak flows up to the 100-year storm for all sub-watersheds, including outlets to Gunpowder Creek and the Christian Street drainage system.
Yeah, I think that's what we're describing here.
So I'm not suggesting at all that they haven't met their requirements at all. And they've done their job just like the other developments that come before this commission. That led me to promote Commissioner McKean's idea of a riparian corridor. Like this stream needs help. It's not in great condition. So what can be done for it? Its primary function today, as I see it, is a conveyance of stormwater from development. It has, oh gosh, at least five or six discharges to it from the various developed areas that come into it. It has very little vegetation on the side of it. So I was pushing for a riparian buffer, but maybe I can let Brian explain why they don't want to go the whole 9 yards with a riparian buffer, but they were willing to do some mitigations, or maybe the commission, I actually proposed it as a condition of approval, or as we say, a mitigation, that the commission would ask them to do these certain enhancements to Gunpowder Creek. You can consider them. You have them, they were handed out tonight in this picture. I'll let the team explain it more, but essentially it's a check dam to tame the flows. Now the flows basically are very gentle most of the time, but in significant storms, it's meant to tame the flows in significant storms. And then they've indicated 5 or so, I think these are just representative, generic 5 or so spots where the edge of the stream is eroded. And I want to pass out pictures so you guys can understand what we're talking about when we say eroded.
So like Aaron said, that check dam, that's where to the right of the page, the line that goes across the creek, that's where we're proposing that feature. That's where those pipes, daylight, slowing flows out of those pipes right away, I think is a good thing. Some of Aaron's pictures show little ripples or rivulets down into the creek. Those are the areas that, we talked through and felt that some mitigation tactics, whether they be, a couple additional plantings, a boulder, other elements. We felt like there's, several locations along that corridor that could benefit from that. And like I said, we thought that was our, that would help there, for sure.
So these dry up when we have a dry spell? Do these actually dry up?
I don't think this fully dries.
I believe they're always wet. Sometimes it's not really a visible flow, like it doesn't move fast. Sometimes it moves fast, but I believe it's always a stream.
I just wanted to point out, I know we've discussed it in the office, that this isn't the classic eroded banks that we are used to seeing in these flashy streams with the, Commissioner Heilman could help me, the reddish soil that really gets cut like this, and you have what's called a fallen stream. What type of soil is that, Jim?
You only get those when you have relief, and because this is flat, you're never going to see that.
Okay.
This
All
is
right.
a cut meadow from
Right.
historical times. We used to skate there when I was a kid.
Right. So the type of erosion I'm used to seeing is from relief, as you say.
Yeah.
This is pretty flat, and also it's a muddy bottom. So you're not going to get those classic carvings into the edge of the banks. The banks are very low here. There is degradation along the bank. The form on the edge of the stream has been degraded. It has to be studied more because it's not typical with the typical banks you see. So this
It's
area.
not. Aaron, it's straight on a flat area. The streams never do that. It should be sinusoidal through this area. That's the way it would have naturally occurred historically. You could go back 100 years and this was under control. So that character is long, long, long gone. And this has been controlled in these conditions for an extreme long period of time. It's controlled. That's why it's the way it is today, plain and simple. If there's no velocity that ever occurs through that area that would cut a new channel, unless there was a major flood, and that's never going to happen. There's no area that would do that here. So it's a controlled area. It's been controlled very, very long. And it's inappropriate to change it at this time. You're never going to put it back into a natural condition. The best is to maintain it without allowing it to degrade beyond where it is. It's controlled. And I think what they're doing here with the check dams and everything else is that purpose, to control it. In fact, in your report, number 5, page 5 of your report, you talk about what they're going to do if they do a riparian, and you looked for what would be important to add to that would be to give us a report for the next 3 years as to what any riparian work you do there does to benefit or otherwise, so we know where to go in the future. That's what I would like to see done with whatever you do with the riparian thing here. Give us information about what results from it. That way we have something to stand on to move forward.
So are you speaking that the permittee would give the report, or my office? I can't
the facility that owns this, when they're done with it, I would like to see a report given back to us as to what's the result of what we have done here. That gives us information which is valuable for any future activities.
Right,
We lack that from the past. We'd like to establish that for the future.
And maybe you want to chime in here, Brian, that you were in agreement when the conditions of approval were discussed amongst you, that you agree with the conditions of approval, which, by the way, my commission actually got Friday night, but also got a tweaked version of it today and handed out on a dais. And we can go over the conditions in a bit, but you were in agreement with the conditions, but you wanted to hold back on any kind of riparian corridor until Choate gets a chance to take a look at this whole system and approach it in an intelligent, thought-out fashion with the flooding nature of the fields and so on, and not just do something or agree to something that might not be the most appropriate approach for this stretch of watercourse. Does that sum it up pretty much?
Yeah, we didn't want to make suggestions without data to back up or support any direction we'd take there. Just felt that was more appropriate.
What I'm confused with here is you say that you're going to be wet trenches all the time. Not trenches, whatever you want to call them. I'm calling them trenches. They're going to be wet because they won't percolate. Is that what's happening here? The water won't drain into the ground? And then you turn around and tell us, you talk about you're going to do underground recharge and you're going to run water, overflows are going to run over to another area. You're talking about pumping water back into the ground. But if the soil's not compatible for this, how is one going to feed the other? I mean, it sounds like you're doing this because the state says you have to do this because of the stormwater, but you know and I know it's not going to work because there's always going to be a wet bottom on those low areas of the field. You've done the deep hole testing out there. What type of soils are under there? Is it clay type material? Is it something that will percolate? Or you're just doing this because the state says you have to do this to comply with zoning or with code?
So I can answer that. In the project area where we did the soil testing was in the location of the rain garden and the stormwater management basin. And what we found there was we have sandy soils because the infiltration rates ranging from 3 inches per hour to over 10 inches per hour. That shows a soil type that's relatively sandy that's very conducive to infiltration. What you have in the Gunpowder Creek area there is you're down in the bottom of the valley. We didn't do any soil testing there, but I suspect what you're seeing with why that stream corridor is wet is because you have the hillsides on both sides with the groundwater breaking out in that flatter valley. So there's groundwater that continually feeds that area, and since it's the base of the valley, you have, that's where the surface water runoff collects. So during your storm events, it runs down into the valley, and then outside of your stormwater events, you have groundwater feeding that stream and feeding the wetlands. So you've got the groundwater breaking out in that stream channel there. There isn't really infiltration. It's breaking out of the ground and running off in the stream.
So that's the wetness you're talking about? The wetness that's going to stay is the groundwater in the ground?
So you have two different situations. Here, you're in a low area of the valley where groundwater is coming up close to the surface and feeding that stream corridor. Up in the area where we're locating the building, our boring showed in some areas we had groundwater that didn't show up as deep as 10 or 13 feet, I think, if I recall properly. And then other areas, I think it might have been about 4 to 6 feet. So it varied across that site. But I mean, here you have evidence of it breaking out very close to the ground surface and feeding that stream. So you have a couple of different conditions where you're down in the bottom of the valley where the groundwater is shallow, and then we're up on the side of the slope where we're putting the building where the soils are more sandy and the groundwater is deeper.
That's funny because when the town put in the storm drains on North Elm Street, they got water at 5 to 6 feet from the buildings that were up higher up on the, on the other side of North Elm Street. So you're telling me that that water dissipates before it gets to this new site that you want to put the building on?
It was strange in the borings. You don't normally see groundwater vary, anywhere from 4 to 13 feet. But that's what we found in the borings that were done for the building. We did those for design of the building foundation. So it does vary on that hillside. It probably depends on the varying types of soils beneath the surface. Some are more permeable than others, and you might have the groundwater table that it clearly varies.
You say when you did the analysis for the rain garden, you found compatible soils for drainage?
Yes, absolutely. I was actually surprised at how permeable the soils were. I did not expect that we were going to have that high level of infiltration, which is why we didn't do the testing and we didn't include it in our modeling to begin with. It shows as a disturbed soil on the soils maps, so we didn't have an indication of what it was, and I suspected that it was just a disturbed glacial till that would have a relatively low permeability, so we didn't count on the infiltration. When the issues were raised here in the prior public hearing and some concerns that Aaron had, we did go out there and do some testing, and I was surprised at how high of infiltration rates we found.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just continue just to finish up here with my environmental planner's report that I handed out tonight. Just running through, there was a minor tweak to the regulated activities they are requesting because they moved, because of the construction entrance involved moving a temporary sed basin flows from a temporary sed basin or from the construction site, from the construction anti-tracking pad and so on, so we removed that. But, and then I run through, I won't read it, but I run through the requested outstanding information submitted to date. They completed, they answered everything I asked for. Soil test results submitted Friday. The figure for the green roof hybrid situation, they handed that in. We talked about the riparian corridor situation. They did change the construction entrance location, the alternatives, which they're required to talk about alternatives that they chose not to follow in the design regarding wetlands and watercourses. And Kevin, Brian, you were going to talk about when the roof, just I noticed a point here, when the green roof is frozen, you wanted to clarify that a little bit, and you didn't hit on that tonight, did you? Did you talk about that?
No, part of that is in the response to comments, but predominantly with that soil profile, that lawn area is going to act just like lawn. If it's frozen, we'll have runoff, and, you know, hopefully if it's frozen, that, you know, precipitation is snow, so it gets in there slowly.
Okay, thank you. Then I go into the recommendations and the conditions of approval. I don't know if you want to go over that now.
I'd rather hold off till the public has had their chance.
Okay.
So if you can just sit tight on that. Do you have any questions? All right, we're going to open it up to the public. We're going to try to keep it to a 2-minute questionnaire. Come up to the mic, give us your name and address, and this wetlands issues only. If this has a concern about wetlands issues only. All right, who'd like to be first?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Thomas Fixlin. I'm a retired water quality scientist. I reside at the Center Place condominiums.
Could I have your name again, please?
Surely.
Pardon me. Your name?
Thomas Fixlin, F as in Frank, I-K-S-L-I-N.
Okay, thank you.
And I reside at that complex, which is adjacent to Wharton Brook. Before I start my comment, I did want to ask, there was a good question about, from our chair, about blocking that road with bollards, and I understand Choate has considered that. I was wondering if that could also be a condition of approval, so that you know, you would prevent parking of cars during events. One of our other residents also questioned during graduation and sporting events, the area where the admissions building is to be constructed, that becomes a parking area for a lot of cars. So where are those then going to go? You know, with once those 70 spaces in the parking garage are filled. And then to my own comment, at the February 1st meeting of this commission, I commented that the design of the grass swale depression in front of the building and the stormwater basin was based on a 10-year frequency, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, for the grass swale depression and the 100-year frequency. Those frequencies are based upon past data. And we all know that our climate is changing, producing more frequent and intensive rainfall. I suggested that the design of the stormwater basin be reevaluated to ensure that the basin is of sufficient size to hold future stormwater events. And since that meeting, I have looked at 3 flooding events that occurred at our complex where units were actually flooded from Wharton Brook overflowing. There have been 3 major flooding events in the last 4 years. They occurred in September 2018, July 2021, and September 2021. During these 3 events, rainfall totals were 7.58 inches in 2018, and in 2021, 5.22 and 5.94 inches respectively. Each of these storms had rainfall totals that exceeded the 10-year frequency of 5.31. So it's an example of the fact that designing these stormwater basins to detain stormwater and eventually flush it off need to be sized appropriately. And I encourage the Commission to require the applicant to redesign and reevaluate the size of these stormwater basins to ensure it can accommodate future storm events. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Rob Blanchard, 39 Curtis Avenue. So Tom just mentioned about the parking that Mr. Kern brought up, and So I think there's somewhere along the lines of 150 or 200 cars that park on that spot where the building is proposed to be built. I would have the same concern that my neighbor has, that those cars, that at some point in time they come in and they park on that field that you say gets wet sometimes, right? Now, that drains all directly into the pipe because the creek runs right under, just to the east of that road, right? So if they're pulling cars in that all are dropping antifreeze or gas or oil or any other pollutant, right, you're going to have an issue if they're pulling cars and parking cars there. So I would propose that another condition of approval would there be no parking off that road along the creek, because it would prevent pollution along the creek. And I think under 11.1 of the regulations, you're allowed to impose a condition that prevents pollution. So that's the first thing that I would talk about. Next thing I would talk about is in July of 2014, Mr. Overton spoke the minutes from the meeting, from the July 14th meeting. It was application A21-6.2 for the new faculty housing. It was on the northern section of Gunpowder Creek. And they said at the time, I'll quote, so just, you know, that was 4 acres of trees that were cleared, 7 new homes. As part of the proposed conditions, this project will not increase flow going to that stream. So we were at the last meeting, and Mrs. Schock spoke, who said she can only use half of her yard because it's flooded. In the audience tonight is Mike Votto, who also lives on that. He's been at that residence for 50 years, and he says he's never seen water as high as it is now. To me, that's a credibility issue now. We have an engineer that's telling us that there's not going to be any water flow. We're going to put all these pieces in place to attenuate additional flow to that creek. Fast forward, okay, to now, we're being told there's going to be less peak flow with all this design around, right? So we have to take the engineering for what it is, right? So my thought is, how can we establish the current condition so that there's a clear chain of accountability and responsibility? So if the engineering fails again, that the people who are downstream or getting flooded out have some sort of recourse back to this issue, right? These people are all going to be damaged by this if this engineering doesn't work, right? So on top of that, I would make sure that I think we need to make sure we have a solid understanding of what the current condition is, so that you know, there's that chain of accountability. Second piece of that is Section 13.3 of the regulations say that the commission can impose a requirement of the applicant to provide liability insurance for 2 years post this project to protect anybody who might be damaged for it. I would also propose that that's a condition, that they prove that they have liability insurance that would cover this type of risk to their neighbors, and that amount should be, you know, in the millions, because and that amount is up to the commission in terms of how they would pick to protect these people downstream.
Your suggestion would be fine, but how can we impose a condition of insurance north of the project? When
I'm not saying north of the project. I'm saying south of the project.
South of the project?
Yeah, I mean, there should have been protection for the people north of the project, and I don't know that exists because it wasn't requested at the time, and here's where we are now. I remember at Planning and Zoning, one of the commissioners gave the school the opportunity to say, you know, can you test before and then after, and if there's an impact, you could do something to help the neighbors, and the question went unanswered. That's a concern that they're not willing to stand behind and help the neighbors that they've damaged. And I think an insurance requirement that gives people access to the ability to make a claim against the applicant if there is damage downstream is appropriate. I think it's highly appropriate. So those are the comments that I have at this point in time, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Phil Euchre. I live on Curtis Avenue. like to start by thanking the Commission for considering all the public input on this project. On one of my visits to Ms. O'Hara's office, I was reviewing some of the data. I saw a document included from the Department of Environmental Protection, written by Mark Brantz. It's a document outlining how to conduct public hearings. I don't know if it made it into your packets as well. Within that, he describes the ultimate role of factual information as a basis for decision-making on any application. To that point, I would like to submit for the record some recent observations regarding the facts of this application, if the chair permits. Thank you. The drainage report for this application, with all of its data and calculations, seems to have omitted a significant source of impervious cover within the watershed. The image you see on this handout shows an overlay of the proposed watersheds on an aerial photo of the site. Watershed 12 is highlighted. The red box, you can see, outlines a school dormitory known as Edsel House. There's an image of Edsel House at the bottom of the page. As you can see, this building sits within proposed watershed 12. It does not appear on any of these charts up here. Edsel House is a structure which contributes about 6,300 square feet of impervious cover into watershed 12. This is an area equivalent to about 1/2 of the proposed admissions building. It's more than 2/3 of the impervious coverage in watershed 12. And the seclusion would triple the impervious surface in watershed 12. Notably, watershed 12 contains detention basin 120, which is receiving all the runoff from the building and the garage. So my assessment shows that this omission would alter the curve number calculations, the runoff calculations, and the calculations for the capacity of the detention basin, and that, I think, is a significant material omission from this entire project. I don't know why this data was excluded from the analysis. But I do know that if the commission approves this application, then you would be approving an application based on inaccurate data. All the calculations within the application are inaccurate. Since section 11.9 of the regulations requires accuracy as a criterion for approval, I'm asking the commission to deny this application tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob Blanchard, Curtis Avenue. This is exactly what I was talking about, right? Mr. Daly, last time we were here, who was here instead of Mr. Overton, said he knows the site well, he walked it well, he understands the property very well. They missed the whole building. They missed the whole building from the analysis. That's, you know, whether it's intentional or unintentional, they missed the whole building. So I'm talking about what happened a year and a half ago, and they're getting flooding in the backyard now, and now we're leaving out material pieces of the analysis. That's concerning.
What gives you the belief that they forgot this building, left this building out? Because somebody from the audience brought it forward that it was never calculated?
It's not in the curve analysis. I've read the drainage report as well. It's not in there. It's not in the calculations.
Do you know what the area surrounding, what the limits of the limitations are to have this calculation?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what the surrounding area, what square footage or what entitles this to be tied into this project? What causes this?
It's in the watershed, isn't it? And that's the source of the water flow that goes into the detention basin in that same watershed.
So you're saying they left this out intentionally?
Oh, I'm not saying they left it out intentionally. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. You can make that determination. I'm not going to.
Well, they're going to explain, when everybody gets through, they're going to explain why it wasn't tied in, if it needed to be tied in. But that's why they're the engineers and we're the people that decide whether or not the project goes forward. So I'm glad that he brought it up, but the question will be answered at the end of this session.
Okay.
Okay? Anybody else that wants to speak for or against this application? All right, do you need time to give answers to these questions that were brought forward?
All set? I think we can respond.
Sigrun Gadwa, Carry Ecological Services, for the record. I'm just speaking with regard to the issue of the effects of increased volumes on bank erosion. This is actually an area that's been carefully researched and papers published in watershed protection techniques. What happens is when the water level in the stream is higher, there is a longer duration of flow adjacent to the upper bank when the bank full conditions last for a longer time. And there's always, as it flowing, whether the water's moving fast or slow, there's always shear stress against the side, the soils on the side of the bank, and gradual wearing away of them, and then undercutting and then caving in usually. And it's a very widely, especially I guess in Maryland and the metropolitan area of Washington and Baltimore, the channel degradation due to increased flow volumes leads to wider channels and shallower channels. And the studies would have, rebar markers on the edges of the banks and returns after different sizes of storms. And I have them I can provide Aaron with some copies of this. So it's a very, very real problem, and it's completely separate from peak flow attenuation. And the other thing is there is significant holding of bank soils by tree roots and also grasses and forbs, other forms, silky dogwood, alder. These shrubs and trees do reduce erosion and do reduce soil loss on the banks. And I think any riparian restoration project should include bank plantings. Willows are especially good at holding bank soils as well. So I don't know anywhere near enough about this project to be opposed to it or for it. I just wanted to clarify that one point. Thank you.
Thank you. One more.
Good evening. Mike Votto, 377 North Elm Street. I'd like to ask the commission a question. First of all, let me just preface, I'm not an engineer. I don't know all these words and techniques that everybody's been talking about. I'm just thinking of the word volume and water, water, water. When you approve an application like this, do you do any follow-up to make sure that whatever was promised to have done was indeed done? and is working? Or do we just say, okay, we gave you permission, go ahead, do your thing, and then you're done with it? I mean, this is no reflection on you guys. I'm just talking about procedure.
Aaron, you want to answer that?
Yes. First off, my office, I follow up on the conditions of approval. Did they bring in everything? Did they comply with all the 5, 7, 10 conditions of approval? That's the first step. Then they commence project. I check to make sure their erosion controls are installed correctly before they're allowed to go to the next step. Then once they start with a construction project, I go out periodically to inspect, and usually they have their own inspectors, site inspectors on that end. And then once it's stabilized, then they get, if this is going to be a bonded project or any project is bonded, they get their bond back if it's sufficiently stabilized. But as far as, I think what you're really looking for is sort of an engineering analysis. Is it working as designed?
Yes.
And no. I don't do that. I don't know of, I mean, I'm sure there's some developments where they have a consultant that they've hired to do that.
Okay.
But no, our engineering department's not equipped to do that. I don't think we've ever done that.
I really think that's an issue. That's a problem. And my sympathy to you guys, because you have to make a decision based on what you're being told by the people that want this thing and the public. And who do you choose? Who do you listen to? And I would like to have all of you take a walk in my backyard, because I was told for the last approval with Choate and those 7 houses behind me that there would not be an increase of water. They were going to put this in and that in. I don't think anybody's ever come out there to see if all the things they said were going to be done were done. All I can tell you is that there's much more water in my backyard, and my brook, the part of the brook that is on my property, is totally filled all year round now, whereas it normally goes down once a rainfall has, gone through, and then it starts going down. And whoever said it before, it does cut into the bank, and it does make its own little streams. So my only issue is I hope whenever, you have to make a decision tonight, but I would hope if it's a positive one, I would like to know if somehow, if it's not in your bylaws or your whatever, if that could be followed through with, see if they have done due diligence, and if whatever they said was going to work is indeed working. Because I got to tell you, it hasn't worked on North Elm Street. I can tell you that right now. Again, I don't know all the words, and I don't know all the engineering things that have to happen, but I'm just going by what I heard that night, and I'm going by what I'm hearing tonight, and I just hope that the decision you make is a good one, and I'm sure you will think about this seriously, but also make sure Choate follows up and does what they're supposed to do and what they're promising they're going to do tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could jump in with that, respond to that. I don't know if the commission remembers, we had a recent development with Mr. John Orsini on, it was 2 and 1107, I believe, Northrop Road. Not the one on the Meriden side, the one on the Wallingford side. And I was very impressed because I didn't ask for it, but his engineer, Jim Cassidy, put into that stormwater management maintenance plan a 6-month, 1-year, 2-year, 3-year follow-up by professional licensed engineer to go out and make sure that those fancy-dancy storm systems that he had were functioning as designed. Because he had pride in that design, and he wanted to make sure it was functioning. And he was trying some newfangled things in that design. It wasn't a traditional system. So, and he did put that in there. So I'm just mentioning that occasionally it is done. Occasionally it's done.
Thank you. All right, you ready to answer the questions?
I'm going to begin with the last one, Mr. Chairman. And perhaps Aaron can comment on that, because I know that with regard to Mr. Votto's complaint, that she went out to the site based on a complaint, and as my understanding is that she found Choate's work was compliant. You did go out there?
Yes, we went out, the town engineer, the town planner, and myself went out, and in response to a specific complaint similar to what Mr. Votto, I don't know if it was Mr. Votto, I believe it was another homeowner had called in that complaint, and we found that those houses were built, we had the plan in our hands, and that everything was built as drawn, the grade, the engineer checked the grade, the patios, nobody shifted, you know, patios or driveways or anything like that. It was built as drawn, and the numbers of trees that were supposed to be taken down or approved to be taken down were. The developer didn't exceed that boundary. And then separate from that, I do go out for erosion control, and they had, I asked for 3 follow-ups, and they remediated 2 of the follow-ups. One they're having difficulty with. I'm supposed to go out in the spring because it was too cold to grow the grass. This was in back where there's a grassy swale that comes back, wraps around into that storm basin, and it was having trouble getting the grass to hold. But we agreed it had to really be, he'd put straw down, but it had to be revisited in the spring.
Okay.
And before I turn it over to the knowledgeable folks at the desk, as to the first speaker who suggested the stormwater basin should be reevaluated, it's already been evaluated certainly by our team, but certainly by the town engineer who found it appropriate. And I think more so what we provided additional evidence tonight is the fact that in that design, we didn't even take into consideration the infiltration that takes place or will take place in the rain garden or in the detention basin. So one could honestly say that it's oversized, but again, appropriate as storm events become more significant. So it is properly sized. It's been confirmed not just by us and our engineers putting their licensed reputation on the line, but also your town engineer. As to the comments from Mr. Euchre and Mr. Blanchard, I'll leave that to Aaron and Brian.
And for the record, Darren Overton from SLR Consulting. Start off with the first speaker, Thomas, sorry if I pronounced the last name wrong, Fixland. He made a reference to the swale depression in front of the building, and I think that ties in also with the stormwater management basin as being designed for a 10-year frequency. That's not the case. It was analyzed for a 2 through 100-year storm, so our analysis includes up to a 100-year storm. I agree with him, we are seeing more rainfall in Connecticut. We're seeing higher rainfall intensities, and because of that, we are using the most current rainfall data, which is the NOAA Atlas 14 data. That is the rainfall data that has the higher rainfall rates from what we used to use from technical paper 1440. And that has been adopted by the DOT for stormwater analysis. So the 100-year storm, he mentioned the range of storms, 5 inches of rainfall up to, I think, 7 inches of rainfall. So the 100-year storm that we analyze for under that NOAA Atlas 14 is 8.3 inches of rainfall. So again, I believe the stormwater management that we have designed and analyzed covers those range of storms that he discussed. As far as Mr. Blanchard, he mentioned some things about failures of engineering, and I think referred back to the faculty housing project that indeed I did work on several years ago. That was off of Hill House Road, and we did provide a similar level of stormwater management, analyzed it in a similar way according to the town standards. We provided a stormwater basin there that discharges to a discharge on the south side of Hill House Road. So, and all the references from Mr. Blanchard and also Mr. Votto mentioned he lives at 377 North Elm Street. That house location is about 9 houses north or upstream of Hill House Avenue. So our discharge is south of Hill House Avenue, and he lives 9 houses north on the stream. So I don't see how the stormwater management or discharge could have any effect on his property if it's 9 houses upstream. He did submit a testimony, I recall, as part of that application that was before the commission. And I believe there was other testimony that came in regarding to the Farm Hill detention pond that's upstream of those properties, as it being, and Aaron might remember this, being modified over time so that it didn't have the detention capacity that it had in the past. There were assertions that that may be leading to the increased stormwater issues in Mr. Votto's backyard. But again, I don't see how the stormwater management that was designed for the faculty housing could have an effect on an upstream property when we discharge well downstream of his property. And this was all addressed as part of the applications that were submitted as part of the faculty housing, and I believe Aaron has acknowledged that those plans were constructed according to the design. And then I think the last thing that I want to address, well, actually, there's two things. Mr. Euchre mentioned the Edsel House. If you look at the Edsel House, the roof leaders are connected into an underground collection system. We believe that collection system ties in with the stormwater discharge that runs south and discharges near the softball field. There's a second discharge pipe in one of the photos there, I think a 15-inch that comes in from the west. And we believe that's where the roof leaders tie in. That's why we didn't include the impervious area for that building in our calculations. We actually probably did make a mistake with the watershed because we included watershed for that house footprint, which we probably should have drawn around the edge of the house footprint and made the watershed a little bit smaller. So the roof leaders don't discharge into our stormwater basin. That's part of the reason why we excluded it. And also, if it did discharge into it, there's no change in the runoff condition there. It's an impervious house now. There's no change in the runoff condition, so our analysis under existing and proposed conditions would be exactly the same, so there would be no change in the runoff conditions. And then lastly, the testimony regarding Sigrid Godwa, mentioning how increases in volume can have effects on erosion. And I agree that does occur if there is significant erosion that's happening in a stream corridor that's caused by the peak flows that are occurring there. If you're simply matching peak flows but do have a potential increase in volume, that longer duration of flows could tend to exacerbate the erosion. That's not a condition that we have here. We have a stable channel that you can see in the picture downstream there. We don't have significant erosion. As was mentioned by others here, it's a relatively flat stream corridor. You have low velocities. There's a very low potential for erosion there. So any increases in volume, if we do have them, that we believe are offset by the infiltration that's here, wouldn't have an effect because we don't have a significant erosion condition downstream in that area. So if there's anything you'd like me to clarify as part of that, I'd be happy to do so.
Well, I'm just confused about the Edsel House. It wasn't taken into consideration when you designed this project, right? And it's
the roof leaders go into an underground collection system that's piped away from the project area.
Right, so it doesn't need to be in consideration of the area that you're designing. It has no effect on what you're doing. It's going to stay the same, and it's got its own area to retention and to run off to the south.
Yes, the roof area drains away from our stormwater management design, our basins, away from our site.
Okay. He's got one more question on that.
For the record, Phil Euchre, Curtis Avenue. A simple site visit to Edsel House shows that the roof on the southern side, which is outside of the watershed, does flow down into a catch, as he said, but all the other surfaces just flow out onto the grass. In addition, the entire driveway in the front is sloped in such a way that you would think it would run off over into the road, but actually it runs off, it stops at the sidewalk and runs off into the watershed. So if you walk the site, if you look at the project, you'll see that this is included or needs to be included in the runoff. Thank you.
Okay, was there any other questions?
That was it.
Aaron, do you have any more to say?
Just back to something Darren just said about, he said we have a stable stream. I don't think it's a stable stream, but from my photographs, I mean, there's, you know, vegetation that's been ripped up by the force of recent, I don't know what storm, I don't know which storm recently caused vegetation to get pried up and taken downstream, and, you know, and which one caused plants to fall in and so on, and but it's, I wouldn't call it a stable stream. It is so flat. It's the flattest stream I've ever had to look at in my job here, so it is unusual. It's atypical from like I say, these other streams that I get to where the evidence of erosion is clear and obvious and kind of stereotypical. But I wouldn't call it, why, I guess I'd like to know why you call it a stable stream.
So if you look at the pictures, the banks are all vegetated. There's no evidence of exposed soil that's being undercut by the flows in the channel that are causing, you know, the channel to continue to widen over time. I think we've had some discussion here tonight about the fact that this is a manipulated channel. It's been manipulated for many years. It's straight because it's a manipulated channel, and not much has changed over the many years that it's existed there. So I would say that this is a stable channel, and we don't see the stream banks widening because of erosion. It's a very narrow and flat, low gradient channel.
Would they widen? I don't know. It's so soft. The mud is so soft. Would it actually widen?
We deal with this on a regular basis. We work for the New York DEP in their public water supply watershed and do stream bank stabilization for them because they have large expanses of channels that continue to erode and widen. And we've been working with them for years to stabilize those channels. That's an area where you see stream banks are moving and changing. And I think as Commissioner Heilman has mentioned, that this likely, when it was a natural stream, was a meandering stream. And when you have natural conditions where flows are high enough to cause erosion, that stream will move. I think we can see this stream hasn't changed over many years. I won't go as far as hundreds. I don't know the history of it, but we don't have a stream that's actively changing due to erosion. We don't have banks that are falling in. We don't have a widening channel. So that's why, in my opinion, this is a stable channel that's not subject to ongoing erosion that's occurring now.
Okay, thank you. I understand stable. There's a spot on the Wharton Brook where the stream actually jumped. It jumped the bend in the river, and it's done it once that I know of, and it will eventually cut that bend of that river off. And this is not that situation here. So yes, I understand now what you're talking about a stable stream, the morphology of the stream. You're talking about the morphology of the stream. Okay, yes. Thank you.
All right, got one more quick one.
This is quick. I just want to clarify the issue up on North Elm. So he indicated that the...
Pardon me, the speaker is who?
Rob Blanchard, Curtis Avenue. That the houses that they were talking about are north of the stormwater discharge. That's true, but the project is more than just the stormwater discharge. There was clearing of acreage of trees and regrading of the property where there's natural runoff that is now affecting this. And relative to the detention pond that it was referred to, nothing's changed since they built the houses, but the water is much greater now. So nothing's changed. 2022, by all accounts, was an average year for rainfall. So in an average year of rainfall, after this project, with no changes to the detention pond, these poor people have substantial water in their yard. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Thank you. All right. And at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing if nobody else has anything else to say. Thank you for all your input and coming out tonight on this stormy night. I'm going to turn it back over to the commission. The time is 8:46. Do any of the commissioners have any more questions?
The only thing I thought was a good idea was a limitation on parking in that area once it's, the parking was pulled up. Let that be a condition that no parking takes place down there.
Well, there's a couple things that go along with that. That's really it's an access point when they have events for emergency vehicles to get in. So I'm concerned about that because I think along with wetlands issues, we need to take safety into consideration. If you put ballards up, there's really,
That I'd be against no ballots for that particular reason.
Right.
Not in the future that they just suddenly use it for an event as parking. For emergency access, that's totally different.
the other thing is, they haven't explained what those people, the 60 or 100 people that come to watch the games on the east side of the property, where they're going to park.
For graduation. Graduation.
Graduation,
All over the place.
any events. There hasn't been an answer to that. I don't know if,
So I just want to point out, you closed the hearing.
I closed the hearing at 8:46.
Right, right. So now you're on the next item. Just so the public knows, we're under consideration of public hearing item, and now it's time for the commission to deliberate and to look at the conditions of approval and knock it back and forth. I believe, Attorney Senaviva can correct me if I'm wrong, you can't answer questions at this point, or is that true? Can you verify that?
Well, they've answered all the questions that were presented tonight. Right?
I don't believe so. Attorney Senaviva, can you comment on that?
I don't know what the question is.
Oh, and at this point, the commission's going to deliberate amongst itself. Are they allowed to gain any new information from you?
No. But again, I speaking to the planner, the environmental planner, the issue of parking typically is a planning and zoning issue. And, you know, if it was an issue for an impact on the quality of the wetlands, we would have presented it.
Yes, this came up. I do kind of think this is more appropriate for planning and zoning, that aspect.
So are you saying that we can't talk among ourselves about this?
Oh, no, you can among yourselves, but you can't quiz Darren about something or Brian about something at this point.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right.
One question of procedures. Is the closing of a hearing a declaration, or is it something that the commission votes on? I can remember being here in the past where the commission was asked to declare that or approve a closing, and it was voted on by the commission to close the hearing. Or is it, you just close a hearing by a declaration of the chair?
That's news to me. I don't know. Maybe I don't know about the voting. We do public hearings so rarely here, but no, I can't recall that we ever voted. But the chair did ask for are there any further questions and so on, and he was wrapping up, and then he closed the hearing.
Right, because my concern was that he stated that the hearing was closed, followed by a question. Are there any other questions? Generally, when you close the hearing, there are no other questions except in deliberation, which usually I thought occurs at the time of a vote.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Hellman, if you want me to ask each individual whether they want to close the hearing or not, then we can do that. But when I refer to any questions, I was referring to the commission if they had any other opinions or feelings towards approve or disapprove this application. I was talking about the 5 among us. There's 6 among us.
Okay, so then it is closed.
If you don't want it closed, I can ask.
No, I'm just asking if there was a procedure for closing, or was it just a declaration by the chair?
Well, I'd rather have it not be the declaration by the chair. I'd rather have each individual say they would like to see the public hearing closed. If that way it's a general consent.
I thought it was done that way. That was my question.
All right, well, then that's the way we're going to do it. I apologize for, this is only my second time of being it's no fun, whatever. Mr. Hellman, would you like to see the public hearing to be closed?
Makes no difference to me. I would, I'm not a regular member, so it's up to you. I'm just working on procedures that I've experienced in the past where there was a vote to close a hearing. And I've been part of a vote to close a hearing in the past, and then found out at the next hearing you could not talk about anything during the hearing. So it was just a procedural thing that I'm talking. Either way, I don't mind. I have no more to say. I've asked my questions.
How about you guys? Fine? You're fine?
I'm good.
You're good? All right, everybody in consent seems to be, we'd like to close the public hearing and move forward. All right?
Yes, so
Good.
would you like me to read the conditions of approval?
Yes.
These you got tonight, I mean, you saw pretty much the same ones last Friday night in your packet in my environmental planners report dated the 24th. When it gets to a change, I'll highlight that. Okay, so the first one is final documents to be submitted incorporating the changes or revisions agreed to up to the close of this hearing. Submittal date to be as soon as possible after PZC action. Number 2, regarding possible changes to the approved site plan set or to any documents associated with this permit that may need to be effected in order to comply with any required changes relative to a possible PZC special permit approval. It is understood that before these changes are incorporated into the Wetlands Commission final plan set, they will be subject to the environmental planner review to determine if a review by the Wetland Commission may be needed before acceptance as updates to the plan. In other words, something very minor, or if further wetland permitting may need to be obtained. For instance, if they move the construction pad entrance, you know, then that has to be determined. Does that rise to that level, or is it just minor? Number 3, environmental planner to be given 1 week notice of commencement of permit activities to schedule inspection for the approval of erosion control measures as installed on site in locations and type as per approved plan, prior to the permittee moving forward with any further work. That's a standard one. 4, now this one I believe Acting Chairman Kern mentioned last time. Wetland Commission placards. These are small placards with a great blue heron on them, and they say Wetland Commission. So this signage is provided free of charge. It's available at the Environmental Planning Office. So these placards are to be installed on posts, 1 near the wetlands located in vicinity where Gunpowder Creek daylights, and 2 further south near the wetlands on either side of the road, crossing just south of the ice rink facility. 5, this is the one that was changed slightly since Friday, the one you got in the packet on Friday. Friday's packet, we were talking about a riparian corridor enhancement plan. So in discussions with the applicant, they wanted to scale that back. They would like to look at that in the future, but this is how it's now framed, condition number 5. Certain measures detailed below shall be implemented in Gunpowder Creek within 6 months of this permit approval. A, to improve the minor erosion in evidence along portions of the banks by the stabilization of the eroding bank areas with coir logs and vegetation to take hold of the bank edge. And B, to tame the force of storm flows experienced during significant storm events which are partially causing the minor bank erosion by the installation of a stone check dam across the bottom of the creek. These measures to be completed as depicted in an image drawing submitted today, which was passed out that we were discussing. This is the one. This is what this condition is tied to. And so it's tied to this drawing, which the actual title is Response to Comment Number 5 from EPR dated February 24th, Potential Gunpowder Creek Enhancement. Implementation of a riparian corridor wetlands enhancement planning plan as part of a larger study of the watercourse, its associated floodplain, and its contributing area is strongly encouraged for the near future. Which, by the way, the applicant was behind that last statement. Unwilling to do that down the road. Okay, number 6, a bond to be posted to cover the erosion control plan. I put the figure of $15,000 on that. I'd be happy to move that one way or the other. You can deliberate that. And number 7, anything else that grew out of tonight's hearing. We heard a lot of information tonight. There might be some, commissioners might want to tack on some more conditions of approval.
Well, Aaron, I have here, do we want to ask them to provide some type of a report, a yearly report?
Oh, right, that's right. That was on their, was that key to their functioning of their proposed stormwater management system?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and I never got a straight answer. My ears are ringing, but did they suggest ballards at the end of where the road used to lead down into the complex? I know we can't ask them questions, so I need somebody else.
Okay, I myself am confused exactly where you're talking about. Could you enlighten me?
On the edge of Christian Street and Smoke.
Gunpowder.
Gunpowder, I'm sorry,
Creek
Smoke.
Road.
All depends if you shot early or shot late. On Christian Street where the road went in to the complex, they talked about putting ballards there so people couldn't get down in there. But they left it open so they could drive down there. So are we going to skip the ballards?
Okay, wait a second. So if in the future, if someone's come down Christian Street, they're going to be able to turn down Gunpowder Creek Road.
Well, you're going to leave the road in place then?
How are you going to get to the gymnasium? And stuff. I mean, that's, and the SAC is down there, the Student Activity Center, and the pool, right?
All right, so the ballards are not going to be in place. And parking.
But that can be, let me just say that issue can be revisited in the planning and zoning process to look at that. But as far as I know, they need that access road. I mean, they need a through road. They need it to work.
And how do we prevent them on special events jamming that thing up with cars on both sides and then just a road to get in and out down the middle? You know, I would call it a fire lane, because if there was an emergency where somebody need to go down there, the ambulance or the fire department, how are they going to go down in there if the place is packed with cars on both sides of the road? Do we want something in writing that shows?
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. I think that'd be perfect for planning and zoning, actually. That's a safety issue. They deal with traffic and safety. I don't know if it's so much a wetlands issue. I guess you're afraid they're going to park on one of the moist athletic fields that are kind of soggy.
If you've been going there for 10 years and you've been parking down there, you're going to go down there and approach that to see whether you can park there. Where are you going to park? You're going to park up at the new building and walk across? You know, that's when they have their soccer events or even graduation. I mean, I'm taking away graduation because that's just it's overpacked big time because of the kids. But when the soccer events or the other sports events they have, what are we going to do to prevent them from jamming up?
I think it's an excellent point, but I think it's more appropriate for planning and zoning.
Okay, then.
Unless you can tell me the tie-in to the wetlands aspect. I mean, I'll gladly bring it up tomorrow with the town planner, and I'm sure the Choate folks are listening right now to this idea.
All right, so the only thing we picked up on the last bullets that we got is the bond we're going to talk about, the ballards they're not going to exist because we can't shut that road off, and then parking on the grass is something we need to talk about on that Gunpowder, Gunsmoke Road. What's going to happen there?
Okay, but again, we agreed that that's more appropriate for planning. Kick
Yes,
it around. You guys kick it around.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Maybe, does any commissioners have any feelings about that being a wetland issue versus planning and zoning issue? Or it's a good idea or anything?
Well, let's move forward.
Does someone want to have wording on that? The other one about the professional licensed engineers to go back and check that the stormwater management system is functioning as designed in 6 months, 1 year?
We do it on a yearly basis and then have a nod from the applicant whether they're going to agree to it or not, or we can't even ask them that.
Annual for 5 years?
It can be imposed. You can impose something like that. So it would be permittee to submit
The annual report for 5 years?
to environmental. Just if you give me a second. Okay, so it has just been brought to my attention. It's in the latest, the February 21st iteration of the applicant's stormwater management maintenance plan. It says under a heading, qualified inspector, it says the inspections must be completed by an individual experienced in the construction and maintenance of stormwater drainage systems. Inspections must be completed by a professional engineer. Inspection timing shall be once in the first year and 5-year intervals after that. So let me just think if we needed to add more words to this a bit. Qualified inspector. Once in the first year, do we want to put a more definitive once in the first year? That's kind of leaves a whole year wide open. Might want to nail that down a little more. And at 5-year intervals after that, that's fine. But once in the first year, so first year after completion, so, but when? How far after completion? 6 months after completion, after the winter, after the first winter?
No, 6 months after the completion.
Okay, 6 months after completion.
Then every year for 5 years, 1 year after that.
And every year for 5 years hence. And what was I going to say?
I thought it was at 5-year intervals, not every year.
We're changing it. We're changing it.
Oh.
We're tweaking it.
Yep.
And we're still kicking it around. We're kicking it around. Oh, and then the other piece, Mr. Chairman, is to and a copy of the report submitted to the Environmental Planning Office.
So we'll have 6 reports when we're done. One for
Right.
after completion of construction and once every year for 5 years. So it will be 6 total.
Okay, so who's going to, do you want me to write the final wording on this one and get it crafted? Just give me a minute if you want me to.
I think you can work with the applicant on the language, drafting up the language so that you're comfortable with it and we're comfortable with it.
So it's going to be, let me if I could just try to voice it here. Okay, inspection of the stormwater management system shall be completed by a professional engineer experienced in the construction and maintenance of stormwater drainage systems at systems, period. First, systems with reports to be submitted to the Environmental Planning Office at 6 months after completion and at yearly intervals for 5 months, for 5 years hence. Okay, I've got that written down.
Right, they're going to provide it. Put in there that they're going to provide the services. Because we're not going to hire an engineer. They're going to provide the.
Oh yes, they already have that in their own
draft. That's fine.
Right. We have tweaked it a little bit, so now they've got to would have to give reports to us, and the 6 months upon completion, which isn't in theirs, so it's tweaked a little bit, and that's the condition of approval. And so that would be condition number
7.
That'd be condition number 7. Okay, thank you, Eileen. Do you want to go back to the bond one?
Yes, we're going to go back to the bond one now.
Okay.
Does the commission have any input on the bond? Jim Hellman? Marnie? No. What, you? No? Aaron, you think 15,000 is enough?
Yes, and here's why. Because planning, as I was discussing earlier in the day, planning and zoning intends to do their own erosion control bond, and they bond for other things too, but the piece of their bond is for performance of the erosion control plan. So we have our piece, and they'll have their piece. So yes, I would think it'd be enough with the 2 pieces together. And the reason we split that is if it ever comes down to it and we have to enforce something, each commission might have their own opinions and act independently. So we don't want it to be a joint bond. We prefer it to be separate.
And what do you think $15,000 for a bond is going to cover?
Well, you know, this is not a large project. This is a 6.5 acre project, so it's, you know, we've dealt with way bigger projects. So it would cover all the silt socks, the erosion control blankets, the silt sacks and all their catch basins, all the erosion control, the construction pad the stone for the construction pad entrance, which often has to be more and more put on, that kind of thing. Silt fencing.
Okay, all right.
I really don't expect this permittee to fall down in this regard, though. Frankly, I don't.
Okay. All right, so it's going to stay at 15,000. Yes?
Yes, it'd be for materials and labor. For that, in answer to your first question, it's material and labor costs, too.
Okay. As long as the public knows what it's going to be used for.
Okay.
All right, now the tough part. That was the last page. It's up to me now. All right, we've had everything presented to us tonight on this application. Does the commission want to go forward with a vote, or do you want to table this to next month to put some thought into it? There's a lot of information tonight that was given. I'm open for suggestions what we do. Good night.
I'm okay with moving forward.
We're ready to move forward? Okay.
I think so. I think you need a motion now.
Oh, I would like to know who is supposed to vote.
Well, right now it's going to be Jim Hellman, these 2 gentlemen, me and Ally.
No.
Okay, good point. Good point. Okay, I guess a little bit of oversight. Mr. Heilman is seated tonight, but he has to stay into the record, just as he's done for previous applications. If he's caught up, done his homework on this project, and which I know he has because we had a chat about this earlier,
Yes, painfully. I watched the whole thing, beginning to end, and I've read every report that has been out on it.
So you missed the February 1st, but you were here for the previous one.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So that's what the recording secretary was a little confused at, because Commissioner Hammond was not here last time.
Okay. You want to make the motion?
Mike can make the motion. It's the regular member, right? Okay, yeah.
One of you two has to make the motion. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that application A22-10.1, 59 North Elm Street, Rosemary Hall be approved with the stipulations set forth the conditions of the approval in the environmental planners report of March 1st, 2023.
Plus, are we adding one?
Well, 1 through 7 as written in the report. Number 7 being the stormwater system inspection plan.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. With which one added?
Added number 7, the stormwater system inspection plan.
Inspection what?
Plan.
Well, should I read it again, or do we all know what it was?
No, you just read it to us.
Okay,
We know
all
what it
right.
was.
That's the reference. And did you say March 1st?
March 1, 2023.
Okay, okay,
For
thank you.
conditions of approval, 1 through 7.
Okay, it's a little hard for me to hear. Sorry, yes, okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I'll start this one. Jim Hellman?
Yes.
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 I just want to say that, as Mr. Votto had pointed out, we go off the information that's given to us. I actually like the idea of an underground garage. I think that it's a good use of space. Vertical space is always good. I think that the green roof is really cool. I love the bioswales. I would love to see a little more effort put into the restoration of and modification of Gunpowder Creek, but little is better than nothing at all. So I vote yes.
All right, and I just want to say, sounds to me that, in my own personal opinion, that everything you did was because you had to do it to get this approved. I don't see, we can't hold you hostage for what's happening out there right now, and I'm not comfortable with the, I don't think we've gained anything here. You'll get your building, and nothing's going to change with Gunpowder Creek or whatever you want to call it, the water problems that are out there. So I'm voting no to it.
Thank you.
Considering she had heard the whole thing last time he wasn't here, we had to speak up that he had to listen. I just wanted to be sure who was going to vote.
Yeah, huh? She found that original today.
Okay.
Okay, moving right along.
It was fun over there.
Okay, you ready, Aaron?
Back in the saddle. Back at the helm.
Until the crowd leaves. Okay, Aaron, old business, A18, 12.2, 32 Barnes Road, request for bond release.
No, not ready.
Okay. Okay, A22, 12.2, 1299 South Broad Street, Hutton Street, 21 LLC, car wash.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Carl Landolina. I'm an attorney with the firm of Fahey and Landolina in Windsor Locks, representing the applicant. I'm joined to my left by Sagan Simcoe, who's a soil scientist and wetlands biologist, I believe. Sarah Castagliole, oh, I'm sorry, I mess it every time, and Matt Bruton. All three of these folks are from B&L Engineering. They are the project engineers. As you will recall, I'll keep this as short as I can, Mr. Chair. Last time we made a presentation to this commission, we had gotten to the point of perhaps discussing conditions of approval, and we were asked to come back to this meeting. In the interim, some of those conditions of approval that were going to be recommended to you, we've discussed and we've changed the plan so they no longer need to be conditions of approval. They're on the plan. One of the other things that was mentioned last month as well, Mr. Chair, was the condition of the wetlands in terms of trash and other things in the wetlands area behind our property. Sarah just gave you copies of some pictures. We asked the owner of the property to go out and clean up the trash that was adjacent to our property line, or the property line of the property. Nobody trespassed on anyone else's property to take care of. We took care of what we could, and so you can see from the pictures what was taken away from the wetlands area and what it looks like behind this proposed building at this time. As you'll also recall, this is an application for a car wash facility. The property is in Meriden and Wallingford. The building that's there now straddles the property line, so the building's in two towns, and there are associated hard surfaces located in Wallingford for parking areas. The proposal is to demolish the building and tear up the impervious surfaces and design a new facility which is located exclusively in Meriden, and the activities proposed for Wallingford are simply to remove the impervious surfaces, to add, I think, 4 inches of topsoil, and to do some landscaping and plant different types of grass. In the wetlands area, there'll be a conservation mix and some landscaping, and in outside the upland review area will be just a typical lawn. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Bruton.
Can you hear me now? There we go. Good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Matthew Bruton. I'm an engineer from BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway in Meriden, Connecticut. So obviously this project is a little bit unique. Usually you guys have applicants here coming to ask to put impervious surfaces like buildings and parking lots in the wetlands or adjacent to the wetlands. we're asking to do the opposite here. We're asking to demolish a building, remove parking, and replace it with vegetation, grass, and landscaping. So obviously we think it's a great benefit to your community in this property, especially adjacent to the wetland towards the rear. So just a quick recap, obviously, South Broad Street's towards the bottom of the page. As our attorney mentioned, the right-hand side of the project is in Meriden. We've received approval from their wetland board and planning and zoning board. And the left-hand side is the portion that does fall within the boundaries of Wallingford. As you can see, a portion of the building falls within, and impervious parking as well. So this is the same plan, obviously, but rotated. So South Broad is now on the right-hand side. So this is the Meriden portion. This is the Wallingford portion with the town property boundary cutting beneath. You can see in the proposed condition, we are proposing to remove everything from the Wallingford side. So that includes the building and the parking, and replacing it with vegetated landscaped area. The wetland does again fall towards the southwest corner of the property. So what we've done since last time we've been here, we've obviously responded to staff comments, but the big thing you see in front of you is the photographic evidence of cleaning up of the wetland area. Obviously, there was a lot of trash that had been strewn about the surface level. Those were picked up, including that van seat as well. I believe the last two photos in the package show that those have been removed where we could from our property. So in addition to that, we've also provided staff comments. I won't read through all of them verbatim, but just to give you a highlight of what was included in the plan set and the application material. We did provide a responsible party who is accountable for the maintenance plan of the property. We clarified some limits of excavation on the property. We added additional native species within the upland review area. We added a cross section of the temporary sediment trap. We added notes related to inland wetlands placards at 50-foot intervals at the edge of the wetlands, added signage related to a natural meadow and mow every 3 years, and provided staff with impervious numbers as requested. Just as a reminder, there's currently around 40,000 square feet of impervious area on the property on the Wallingford side. 1,700 approximately is within the upland review area. We're going to 0, so there'll be no impervious area if this project moves forward. Aaron has provided a list of conditions of approval. We've had a chance to review them. We're in general happy with all of those in terms of compliance. I do have one question related to one of them, but I'm happy to discuss or ask any questions as the commission sees fit.
Simple, right? No problem.
No problems.
That's great. I know you spent a lot of time with Aaron, and I've had some discussion with Aaron on it, and I know we were directed to, she was directed to get involved in the state highway, and she spent a lot of time, I don't know if the highway or DEP, I mean various places in the state to try and get more information. Now, what she has conditions of approval, and I believe you're agreeing to, is quite an extensive planting plan and management plan on our side of the property.
Correct.
And do you want to go quickly through what you're agreeing to?
Sure.
While he's looking there, I'd just like to mention to the applicant the Phase 1 environmental study on the Terracon.
Yes.
It was informative, but I think it missed a tremendous piece of information regarding this property, and it seems like they jumped from 34 to 41 and 51 and then 92. But they missed the fact that there was a major fire on this property. The previous restaurant that was there burned to the ground. Mm-hmm. And you often wonder if some of that material isn't causing our rust problem, depending what came out. I'm not saying it did, and I think you've addressed it. I just think Terracon could have done a better job of identifying that history item in the Phase 1 study. You may want to discuss that with them.
We will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So conditions as presented by staff, and I won't read verbatim, obviously, but So in general, number one condition, the change is obviously highlighted in bold down towards the bottom. That's in black there. So it's asking, we provided an updated landscaping plan for, after the last meeting. There was a request to change out some species, specifically goat willow, and also to add up to 10 more shrubs and trees in addition to what's already on the plan. So we're happy to provide that. Number two is, and this is the one I actually have a question on, just for clarification, is asking us to provide landscaping at the end of construction, and it's to be done at an appropriate time, either in the fall or the spring. Obviously, that's pretty standard for New England, making sure we're not trying to plant in December or in the middle of August where these plants wouldn't successfully take and be able to mature. Just want to clarify that if we do finish construction of the building in the winter, you're okay with us waiting until spring to plant?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Item number 3 is related to the restoration enhancement planting area and upland review area, making sure that a qualified professional is doing inspections, making sure invasive plants are not taking root, and then obviously removing them as appropriate if they are discovered. It's not a problem. Number 4, Mr. Chairman, relates to this discussion you were just having about potentially buried material. So obviously it says any buried material or buried items identified or encountered during demolition or construction process will be removed off-site, replaced, and as needed with clean fill material. Yes, obviously want to agree with that. We do this is kind of standard on any project. If we run across anything from a dinosaur bone to a rusted out car to something toxic, we need to address it. So that's you know, obviously something that we're okay with. Number 5 is related to erosion control measures, making sure that the environmental planner has a chance to review prior to activities advancing on the property. Number 6, again, is related to the environmental planner being able to conduct periodic site visits to investigate any potential issues. And then she has some bullet points related to steep slopes, wetland restoration plantings, and then obviously the monitoring of that iron oxidizing bacteria in the wetlands. Number 7 is related to this temporary sediment trap. That's obviously as part of our erosion sedimentation control plan that the contractor will implement during earthwork operations, wanting to make sure there's 2 aspects of it, that it's installed above groundwater. We obviously you know, have an idea of where groundwater is, but depending on weather conditions when construction starts, that could fluctuate up or down. We want to make sure that it's clear from your regulations and from this condition that we want the contractor to install that above groundwater, so that's no problem. And then in addition to that, as a belt and suspenders, adding in a stone check dam in the southwest low point of the property, which is in this area here, where I'm circling with my finger. As the commission remembers, we have installed a double row of silt fence, straw hay bales, so in addition to that, now a check dam. So this is the low point where the water is directed, right adjacent to your wetlands, so it's going to be really sufficiently protected with all those devices in place. And then the last item there, number 8, is a request for a bond of $30,000 related to erosion sedimentation control and landscaping.
I'd like to be heard on that before you move forward, Mr. Chairman. Given that we will undoubtedly have an E&S bond for planning and zoning as well, and given your discussion on the last matter, we think that that might be, you know, a little excessive. This is a small piece of property, about an acre in your town. The S&E controls from a wetlands perspective, I can't imagine the cost being anywhere near the $15,000 range. And keep in mind that although, you know, we are going to do some planting and landscaping, obviously, to the extent that we aren't able to do it given the time of construction, I think your regulations would provide that we would at that point put up an additional bond to ensure the implementation of the landscaping measures at that point. So I don't think that the $30,000 bond would cover that. That would be covered under a separate item, typically, either by yourself or planning and zoning.
The point well taken. Let us mull over it.
Of course.
But I know there's certainly, I think the issue of the bond was the volume of plantings requested by Aaron.
Right.
So we'll talk, we'll think about it.
Yeah, obviously, if we put them in before we're asking for a CO, we won't get it.
Let's.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
let's
Chairman.
But point well taken. I'm going to go with Nick. Nick, comments? Because I know this is your backyard, and I know what that means.
You talked about every 3 years you're going to mow. You're talking about the parcel, the Wallingford parcel?
That was a request by staff for the meadow portion of the seed mix. It's not something that you would mow typically like the lawn at your house. You let that grow up in higher levels, and it's mowed typically with that species every 3 years as opposed to on a weekly basis during the spring and summer. So that was a request from...
The lawn area will be mowed routinely, just like any other lawn area.
Well, you're going to divide this up, then you're going to have wetland plantings, and then you're going to have a lawn that you're going to keep groomed?
Yes.
Because
so sorry, let me clarify. Yep, there's lawn area, and then there's a meadow area. The meadow is towards the back, adjacent to the upland review area. Towards the front, in terms of an aesthetic from the street, it'll be lawn from the people that are visiting the parking lot or driving by. But as we get towards the wetland area, your protected area that you're concerned about, species turns to this meadow as a transition.
That's fine. I'm just concerned of when you mentioned 3 years, everything can grow in 3 years. I've seen saplings come 3-4 inches in diameter because it's a good soil base. But no, that's fine if that's...
If you want to make it shorter, that's up to you. That'll be your discretion, but that was what was recommended by staff. So.
Well, just every car wash around Wallingford and Meriden, I go through Meriden frequently. The new car wash, you go up there and there's litter everywhere. So any obstacles that you have on the Wallingford side for trash and papers to hang up into the bushes, looks like crap. So if we can have it groomed or maintained where the guy that's mowing the lawn is going to have to pick up the bag from Burger King or whatever it may be, that's the only thing I'm looking at is the neatness of it.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's why the 3 years, I'm going to say in 3 years you can have an awful stormy.
Yeah. Although this is automated, there will be staff here. The car wash is automated, but there will be staff here.
On the other hand, those woody shrubs can capture the litter, and it could be, instead of having it blow off the property, as long as it's cleaned up in a timely manner.
Well, take the ride up to the Meriden new car wash in Broad Street in Meriden, and drive around the back of that place and look at the crap that's stuffed up along the greenage. Vegetation that they planted catches everything. It's coming from the people using the car wash. Burger King bags, oil cans, whatever. That's not even a year old yet. Right. So that's all my concern was, that we didn't want the Wallingford side to look like a trash bin.
Right. Yeah. And again, this is going to be mowed frequently. This is the back area here is what we're proposing, 3 years. But again, not to say that that's going to eliminate the obligation of staff and the applicant of picking up trash on a regular basis. That needs to be done on a daily basis, in my opinion.
I think 3 years is too long. The vegetation is going to grow out of control. You're going to have difficulty mowing it.
We're happy to change it to 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, whatever staff.
Allie, you got any more questions?
I'm good.
Allie?
Good. I'm good.
Seth?
No, I'm good.
Mike? Jeff?
No questions.
Jimmy?
No, I just wanted to comment that the stormwater operations maintenance program looks very good, very interesting, and if followed, I think it'd be very useful to staff, provided it's done and carried through.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any questions?
I did have one. I thought the last time we discussed, is there going to be a sign that differentiates if that's a meadow or not? Because remember last meeting.
It's on the plan now.
Okay, thank you.
There was it's not a condition of approval. It was added. It was incorporated before the last.
Thank you.
Alan? Aaron? Questions?
I know I had asked for that in my initial conditions of approval, and then you guys went and folded it into a revised plan, and this came in Friday, I believe. Anyway, use the mic here.
We can't hear you, Aaron.
Oh. Okay, so I asked for signage and a bunch of other things, and you then quickly folded it into a revised plan. At least I hope you folded all those things in. So could you show me, maybe, Sarah, where this signage is and so on? So I want to make sure you got all those little, there was all sorts of signage recommended. I'm referring to, just for the commission's This was in the February 24th version where I asked for all sorts of signage for snow disposal and cutting. Where is that? Or maybe it was in a previous environmental.
Sarah, the response to comment letter shows it on SP1.
There was a sign to distinguish the meadow area, Commissioner Kern, from the lawn area, so they just don't mow the whole thing every week, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, that's fine, but we don't want them to do it every 3 years.
Right, right.
We'd like to change that to either every other year or...
Okay, and then when they came back in, I believe, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, I read somewhere I wanted 3 years, and you guys changed it 3 years or to naturalize, meaning go wild, which personally I like, but I don't know.
Well, my recommendation is not 3 years. So where are we going with this, Aaron?
Well, I'm just clarifying. You have to make that tweak.
Well, it'll be taken care of. Where are we going?
Okay, where we're going, where it becomes, it is kind of complicated. There's an open meadow area.
Yeah, I understand that.
But they then propose the same meadow mix creeping in amongst these 30 shrubs. You can't mow in between these shrubs.
So what are we doing?
I don't want mowing in between the shrubs. The shrubs are going to get mowed over. They're going to get annihilated.
I don't think so. If you got shrubs in this high, I don't think the guy cutting grass with a finished mower,
they're going to be
with a $15,000 mower, he's going to go cut brush. Well, they'd have to fix it. That's what the bond's for. Got to use the microphone.
I just want to check the signage on, I'm looking at SP1 on their site plan where Sarah says they have put the signage, okay, provide sign that states natural meadow area, mow every 3 years, snow disposal prohibited. Okay, so in the condition, we got to tweak that. So it would be, the sign would say, instead of mow every 3 years, what did you want it to say?
2 years.
Okay, so we got to make that. And that would be put on the March, the one I handed out tonight, the March 1st one. Mow every years. Okay.
And then
While she's looking it up, is commissioners all right with a $15,000 bond? Jim?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Yes.
Nick?
I'm not, because the comment the owner of the property made at the last meeting was that he didn't have to do anything. So I just feel as though we give him approval, he's just going to do he's not going to do anything. So you're talking a $3,000 or $30,000 bond is $300 a year. I don't think that's hard to swallow. He's not coming up with $30,000. He's coming up with $300.
Well, again, I leave this to your discretion. I think my recollection of what he said was a little bit different than yours, Mr. Kern. But notwithstanding that, again, this is at your discretion. So
You're saying that he didn't say that, or
no, I'm saying that first of all, what he said and what's proposed here and what you will approve are entirely different. His understanding of wetlands law coming from Tennessee is different than we understand it as we sit here today. What he's going to do is whatever you approve on this plan, irrespective of what he said. So he can't get a CO, he can't move forward until he complies with all of the items listed in the site plan and all the conditions of approval from both this commission, the Wetlands Commission in Meriden, the Planning and Zoning Commission in Meriden, and the Planning and Zoning Commission here. So irrespective of what he said, what he's going to do is whatever you approve.
so then he'll get the $30,000 back quicker. He complies and jumps on the Wallingford side, gets it done. He'll have his money back quicker than waiting.
Again, that's your discretion.
Okay, hold on. What else, Aaron?
Sarah, where are the wetland placard signs, or aren't they on here? Did we leave it up, that I'm going to tell you where to put them?
Sarah, that was, Aaron, that's a note that was added to LL1, requiring placards every 50 feet on the outside edge of the wetland restoration planting area.
At the top of the page, in the little notes area.
Okay,
And then one other thing I was going to point out, to support your point about the shrubs being mowed, in your conditions of approval, you did request that they're a 3-foot minimum height at the time of planting. So we are gonna, there will be at least 3 foot tall.
If you could re-explain that, Sarah, please.
In the conditions of approval that Aaron provided to you, the shrubs were to be a minimum of 3 foot at the time of planting.
So they'd be unlikely to be mowed over, as the chairman suggested.
All right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one other issue. If you notice my condition of approval number 7, we've never had one like this. I have worked hours with over the last month and a half trying to wrestle this one to the ground. And I would like the engineer, either one of the engineers here, to explain exactly how this is going to work. Now, what this is that their groundwater level, they said, was at 238. Okay, but that was taken in August, and that we had a severe drought declared in Connecticut. So I don't know where that groundwater would be today. So hence, if you're putting your temporary sed trap at 239, you know, and I don't know where the groundwater is today, so we came up with this condition. You, Matt, and I came up with this condition, but as a practical matter, I don't really understand how it would work. When that groundwater, if it's coming up.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, Commission, the question that Aaron and I were discussing leading to this condition was wanting to make sure that the temporary sediment trap, which we would install in this location here during earthwork operations, again, it would be a short period because obviously it's a very small site, that would capture any runoff and then let the sediment settle before being discharged out. We wanted to make sure that we have a temporary sediment trap that's needed. We want to make sure that it's above groundwater, because if groundwater fluctuates and raises, that would remove that volume from capacity during a rain event. So we have groundwater data from our geotech report that shows it around elevation 238. So we set it at that elevation. With concern from Aaron, we raised it up in the latest set of plans to 239 to give us a 1 foot buffer in case it fluctuates. But obviously, depending on weather patterns, it could be higher or it could be lower during construction. So the condition that we came up with is to, let me see, read it here. Temporary sediment trap to be constructed at an elevation sufficiently above groundwater level in the field as may be necessary, right? So the contractor will have the ultimate say on the final elevation with our input when they're actually out there. If it's a rainy spring, it could be higher or it could be lower depending on the weather patterns when we decide to construct. So we wanted to make sure you guys had the ability to make sure that that was being flexible.
So as a practical matter, let's say it is wet. What does he do? What does he do then? How does he get his trap up higher? How does that work?
He'll reshape the temporary sediment trap to be out of the groundwater table. But we need to still provide the same amount of volume. So the shape would vary depending on where that groundwater is at. If we don't hit groundwater where we think it is, then it'll be a certain shape. If it's higher, then we'll elongate it and shallow it up a little bit. But the goal is always to have the same volume that captures the inflow area from the upgraded area that is being disturbed by the earthwork operations.
What elevation is the weepage at right now? Seems to be running pretty good.
I think we had groundwater elevation around 238.
Yeah, 238 was the highest elevation out of all the borings.
And to give you context, Commissioner, the edge of the wetland is around 234, 235. So obviously as we come up the slope, the groundwater table kind of obviously is buried several feet. So in this area here, proposed grade, we're 242, 243. So we expect to have 2, 3, 4 feet between finished grade and where groundwater is, from proposed grade to where we think groundwater is.
With the disturbance picking that iron rust, whatever's buried under there, do you have to replace it with a certain type of soil so that your retention's going to function properly?
So we're not proposing in the final condition any detention basin here. This is just going to be a sloped lawn. But so if we find anything that's contaminated, that obviously would have to be dealt with appropriately and disposed of and replaced with an appropriate structural fill or common fill. But in the final condition, there's no basin being proposed on the Wallingford side. So normally, if we were drying a basin and we didn't want it to infiltrate, we'd put in a certain soil to make sure it didn't weave through a berm or anything like that. But we're not proposing anything here in the final condition. It would just be a hole dug for the temporary flows during construction. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have no questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Jeff?
No question.
No question.
Okay. You're all set, Aaron?
I don't know if you want to hear, the wetland scientist is here, if you want to hear something about iron oxidizing bacteria, or if you're all set with that. He handed in a letter report a week ago. You got it in your Friday night packet. Sarah, is this yours or mine?
It's an interesting situation, but I think, my opinion is, I think you're going to find an undesirable iron solution, not iron ore, but iron, steel in there, possibly from when the restaurant burned, but who knows, you'll find it sooner or later up there.
Maybe right.
Well, I just assume move along. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to determine significant activity of this application.
Could I ask, please, who are the voters going to be?
I'm sorry?
Who are the voters going to be, Mr. Chairman?
The 5 dedicated commissioners, official
5 regular
commissioners.
commissioners? Okay.
Official commissioners, no alternates.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay? So I'll entertain a motion regarding significant activity at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that application A 22-12.2, 1299 South Broad Street, Hutton Street 21 LLC, the car wash facility, be deemed not a significant impact activity.
Is there a second? Motion made and seconded.
Who was the seconder
Who's that,
again?
Jeff? Or Mike?
Russo? Thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion? Call for a vote. Nick?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Yes. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny this application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that application A 22-12.2, 1299 South Broad Street, Hutton Street 21 LLC, car wash facility, be approved with the conditions in the environmental planner's report of March 1st, 2023, with the change to number 1, that the meadow be mowed every 2 years, and the revised planting plan would eliminate goat willow, and the proposed trees must be replaced by black gum or swamp white oaks, and to add 10 more shrubs of a mix from above native species listing of shrubs.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Nick?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. All right, we'll go on to the violation of Schoolhouse Road. Aaron, are we all set to act upon that tonight? Or make a decision here? Because last meeting we had a decision whether the commission wants it to stay or to be removed. Are we in a position to make a determination? I mean, there's no anything else?
There's no easy answer to that. The last month, there kind of was the sentiment to let it stay. The month before, to have it removed. I've always felt that it should be removed. I can walk you through the pros and cons of having it stay, having it removed. There's pros and cons each side, so if you want me, I could walk you through that.
Well,
We have some new ideas here of how to
how to handle it.
Now, last month, unless the commission votes to leave it there, it was determined to come up with a yes or no answer right now. To determine to leave it there or take it out, because this has gone on too long for everybody involved. So I'll entertain a motion to approve or deny, or I'll take a vote, and the vote will determine what's going on by the individual.
Which applications are you entertaining first and second?
Well, you have this gentleman as well as this gentleman. You're 69?
Yeah, I'm 69.
69, 67.
And James, could I just chime in real quick? I mean, obviously it's been going on for a while. It's been a lot for us too, and we appreciate, you guys, what you've been doing, and, it's almost like every month we come here, we're getting thrown around. And, I'm sure you guys, it's a lot for you guys too, but as a homeowner, I mean, first meeting, we got mixed signals. We did it. What we did, it was misinformation, yada, yada. You guys said, come back with a line. We came back with a line. We come back with the line. You guys say, well, we want to know how much fill's there. It's like, oh, okay, so next meeting we come, we do all the information, we prep. I mean, we do a lot of, like, I've been doing a lot of work on this myself, so is my neighbor. We come back with the depths. You guys say, well, now we want to know, I forgot what the next one was, but whatever it was, we came again, and we said, all right, here's our plan. We come with the plan, and then all of a sudden, obviously last month we were here late, 11:30 at night, and you guys are saying, all right, now take it out. So it's really frustrating, all the work that we've been putting into it, and obviously, it all started from misinformation. So, and then so this past month, I said, all right, I'm gonna go and see, what it takes to remove the brick from my property. Obviously, I have less going on in my yard. I got quotes from people for over $3 grand to remove it. They said to me, if the material's not harmful, we suggest that you bury it, because it'll be easier for you and better for us. And they explained, the material, for them, it's more of a hassle because they have to separate what's there for dirt to the brick, and then they have to crush the brick. And that's basically why nobody wants it, because it's labor intensive. It's not that the material's bad. It's labor intensive for them. So, I didn't have any of it removed this past month, mainly because the conditions did not allow. But the cost was definitely over my head, and I wasn't gonna pay that. It was dropped off of my property for free. I was considered good fill, and that's why I said, okay, bring it. All misinformation. So, for us to come here and just be struck last week, I was here at 7 a.m. last week, or 7 p.m. And somebody was saying, oh, if you were here listening. Oh, I was here listening. And I've been here every meeting listening. And I've been coming and doing, I think, my due diligence and helping out. I mean, I've learned a lot. Like I said, I respect everything you guys are doing. But, I mean, I just don't think I don't think that's fair at all.
No, it's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
That's why, if you recall last meeting, I wanted to have this meeting to be the final, a yes or no meeting.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, we want it to be done with too. But obviously, from all this hard work that's been going on, I don't want to say, all right, yeah, vote it in, and now, all right, now I got to pay $5 grand to get this shit off my property.
That's beyond our control.
No, yeah, no, I understand that, but I mean, we've been working hard to do this, and obviously the burden is more so on my neighbor. I can only feel for him more, but that's just kind of my 2 cents. It's been frustrating for us too.
Well, I can either take a vote, or I can take a poll. Which would the commission rather do?
I just have a quick comment, because in preparation for this, I went back and I watched the videos again to rehash in my own mind, freshen up my memory, in one little phrase that you just dropped, my due diligence. Did you read your deed? Because it has a conservation easement on it about the wetlands. You obviously did not read your deed, and you said you didn't read your deed. When you went to your closing and they said sign here, you just signed there. And you never even knew what your deed was.
Yeah, this was my first house I've ever bought, so maybe I needed to learn a thing or two. You're probably right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Always
almost,
read what you sign.
right, no, I agree.
And it's on, I know, I had Erin check today when I spoke to her about the hearing where she was confirming my attendance tonight. Then I said, you have the copy of their deeds? And she said, the whole neighborhood has this easement. So, yeah, it sucks.
No, yeah,
that you
no, I
just
understand.
racked up
Yeah,
a
it's
big,
like
a big expense. I can suggest a home equity line of credit, maybe, to help you out with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't even want to talk or consider about that, you know, because even Vitale, during that meeting that you're referring to, he said it, you know, attorneys rush through shit, you know, they don't.
Your due diligence is to protect your own legal skin.
Yeah.
And that would be to read what you sign, including your deed.
Me, that's why we called the town in the first place, though, to help
You
us
had
in the
the
right
piece
direction.
of paper right there in your home safe the whole time, or your filing cabinet, or wherever it is you keep your important papers.
And we don't have a complete deed. We went through everything. We don't have a complete deed.
We had to get in contact with Erin, come down. She went into the engineering office and actually showed us the original deed.
The bricks can be moved out of the wetland, graded back closer to the house to make.
Use the microphone.
The bricks can be moved back closer to the house and used to make a more gradual slope so that the grandparents living in the family are able to walk down into the backyard without their being taken off the property. There's a good deal of upland in number 69 on Matt's property. He could dig a deep hole there. He could sell the clean fill in the hole for a reasonable amount, or dispose of it without huge expense and put the harmless bricks into that hole. They don't have to be trucked off with a lot of expense of gas instead they could be left on the property but put in the upper area, which is not high functioning wetland, or which is upland or relic wetland due to the long ago building of the foundation, which has deprived it of groundwater. There's a section that I talked about at the last meeting I attended, which is, it still has models, but it's completely cake dry soil. It's no longer functioning wetland. It doesn't have the hydrology. So there's about a 40-foot zone where
go ahead, Nick.
he could put, bricks could be graded in.
Yep, you've been on both sides of the fence. You've been the staff person and you've been on the other side of the fence, so you know where we're going with this. Some of us have been here 35, almost 40 years with regulations to conform and oblige by.
I agree that the wetland, I think that significant restoration could mitigate for the damage and make it not be a precedent, because the precedent issue is really serious for you guys. You don't want them just to get this to occur and there not to be any repercussions. But they're willing to do a significant high quality and expensive restoration in the lower area to make amends for the damage and push up the bricks and up in the upland area by the house.
Go ahead, Nick.
We have to follow the rules and regulations of wetlands and land wetlands. Originally, I thought you could grade them off, put topsoil over them, and have the grass grow. But we're setting the precedent here to everybody else on that road or in town. Well, we'll put them in there and then ask for forgiveness. So I've changed my feelings on this, where it needs to come out, not because they're not nice people. It's because we have regulations to follow. I'm sorry they didn't have the deed. I'm sorry there was miscommunications with Erin. But somewhere we have to draw the line. The same thing with you. I'm sorry for what happened to you. You filled in the wetlands, then the material needs to come out. It's no different than if you...
wetlands, but not necessarily the property.
Oh, no, in the property, because it's going to cause an alteration of the lot itself. We've seen pictures of the lot on both their projects. And I understand they have in-laws or outlaws or whoever that wants to use the backyard, but that's somewhere we have to comply and hold our ground. And unfortunately, you people are going to be the ones that I feel that needs to be removed. Well, we're not setting you as an example. These rules and regulations have been here for 30 or 40 years. Nothing's changed. And I'm sorry for the void you had between staff, Wallingford staff, and what you did. I'd go back to the guy that put him there because I know well he knew he wasn't supposed to be doing that. So I'm sorry. My opinion has changed, and I'd like to see this stuff removed. The same thing with the wood chips. You don't understand the wood chips. They draw bugs. They stink when they start to decay, and that's the worst thing you can put in the wetlands is chips, because they...
What, can we remove part of it? And Seagrin has a plan to even put a pond in the back, to bring back the ecosystem, things like that.
Stop.
You're not even giving us a chance, though.
See?
That's mitigation.
Yeah.
That is part of it.
This is the problem, is that you don't, you're just being stubborn because you don't want to undo what you did.
No, I'm just wondering, so there's going to be a large void now in the backyard and we just leave it and let...
What was there before? A large void that you're
No,
really concerned about?
There was trees.
Make it like it was before. You don't need a new pond. You don't need to do an even more, you're so concerned about money, and now you want to spend how much to put in a pond?
Natural flowing pond that's going to, the water's going to go right in. That was one of the plans so that we can have the species and things come back.
That's
We don't
worse.
need a pond,
That's worse.
why.
That's worse.
So we're going to have a crater in the backyard instead, and that's worse? I'm going to have my kid going back there to a giant crater?
Maybe watch your kid a little better then.
Excuse me?
Excuse me. But, you know, here's the thing.
You
is
are
that,
to talk
all right,
to me like
all right.
Wait, stop. Wow. One person at a time speaks.
I'm one person. Don't you dare talk to me about
I'm a
being a parent
volunteer.
like that.
I'm a volunteer here.
And
And
I'm
this
a
has
parent.
been many meetings that we've had here late into the evening.
And I've probably been a parent
totally
a lot longer than you,
understand
so don't
that
you dare come at
I've
me
lived
and
here
tell
my
me about
whole
watching
life.
my kids.
I am a mother too, but listen, you have a crater in your backyard, I've got a really steep hill. So
Okay, a crater? Your
I
kids
can't
could
fill
fall
in my hill, and you can't fill in your wetland.
Ironically, your lot already filled wetlands in from the builder. So your wetlands goes way up more than where the soil is now. Interesting on brick. We talk about brick. Early on the commission, we allowed someone to fill not a wetland, but an upland review area. And the interesting part was it was okay to put blacktop in this scrap blacktop old driveways. But I think it was actually the water department says, don't put the brick in. The brick is no good. And it drove me crazy because I couldn't understand how the brick was no good, where it's nothing but clay that came out of the ground to go back to switch over to asphalt. But that's another story. Okay. Commissioners, you want to vote or just take a poll? Take a poll. Nick? Leave it or take it out?
Take it out.
Deb?
Take it out.
Mike?
I'm going to side with homeowners, leave it.
Okay. Jeff?
Remediate.
Take it out.
I'm in, leave it, take it out. So, take it out. That's where we're going to go.
Can we put a condition to have the contractor remove it?
You can have anybody you want to remove it. I mean, I don't know what...
What's the timeline on this? I mean,
I don't know how there's too many talking at once, please. I don't know how we can make the contractor take it out. He's part of the violation though, Aaron, correct?
He has his own violation.
But not on this property.
No, on both those properties, I gave him a violation letter on both the properties.
Well, then he's in part of the violation. Why did you give him the violation letter?
Because in the Wetland Act, you can go after the contractor or the property owner or
Okay.
both.
Okay. All right.
There's your
That
answer.
answers
You
it.
take them to court.
okays.
So it's to take it out of the upland review area and the wetland area?
Wetland area.
Okay. So mine is, so essentially, I don't have to necessarily take it out of my property.
Could it be buried in the front yard? And then, so long as the grading stayed the same?
He can bury it anywhere, it's not a wetland. He wants the brick in his yard.
What about in the upland review area?
No, because he's got to have permission to put it in the upland review area. He still has to come before us. We want it gone. Now, because of winter conditions and the mud and everything with the spring application, it's not something that's going to happen in the next 30 days. We know it's going to have to be towards the dry season, or material will be removed so that they don't trash the stuff out into the street. But it's got to be gone. It's not about building a pond or building the front yard or making it steeper or whatever. We want the material removed.
Clarification.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I'm just following up on what Nick said. So as far as 69 Schoolhouse is concerned, could he take his bricks out, because he doesn't have that many, and put them in his upland review area?
She said put him in his front lawn.
I don't think he wants them in the front lawn.
I have areas in my backyard that are not in the upland review area.
You got area.
I have probably from my right side, I probably have about 50 feet over.
Yeah,
But
I don't, I mean.
you were putting him in the upland review area, you would need a.
Right, I'm saying 50 feet.
Yeah, and that's what Nick was saying. If you're going to use the upland review area, you've got to come back to us.
Okay, so in theory, if he walked back in, I know the permit's $110. If he went through that exercise, would the commission approve him having the bricks in the upland review area?
Do you understand gone?
No, I was just clarifying. I'm just clarifying if you want him off the entire property, or just that he could pull them up but keep them on his property, or even on the non-upland review area.
I don't care if he stacks them up next to the mailbox and puts a for sale sign on them. I don't want them anywhere near the upland review or the wetland area.
Okay, that's what I wanted that clarified. Okay, thank you. Do you want to put a timeline on this removal, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I don't know, 6 months, yeah?
I'd give him 6 months, because that'll bring us into July.
A little bit later, which is better, I think.
Yeah, because the dry season, I would give him at least 6 months to get to do the improvements.
Okay. Before we're done here, I would like a vote on the order, each property separately. So a vote on 69, a vote on 67, with the timeline, and then, if you so choose, what they do with the hole that's left, or are they just going to be let free to do whatever with the hole that's left?
We have no idea what to do with the hole. That's not our position to do with what's in the hole. The hole is wetland, correct?
Correct.
What do you do in a wetland?
Well, I mean, they could just let it go wild.
Can I just say something?
My kids, she'll hear about it.
I understand that you guys are volunteers and thank you for your time, but I'm sorry. That was very unprofessional, and I was taken back. Like,
Good thing
All right,
I'm
I'm
embarrassed
sorry.
for her. That was like really upsetting.
Yeah, that was very
You're a
disrespectful.
volunteer to talk about somebody's
I'm
children.
sorry I lost my temper.
I'm like sick over that. Like, that was just unprofessional.
I'm sorry I lost my
Not
temper.
what this town stands for. I've lived in this town my entire
I just
life.
moved here and I want to leave.
All right, Aaron, you're going to give him 6 months, right?
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to,
Yes?
the outcome of this violation would be to remove all the material in the wetland, 6 months to do so. Is that it, Aaron?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like that voted on separately for 67 and 69. And then before we close, I would like to know what to do with the other, with Mr.
Well, you're gonna
Little
go-
K's violation.
What's that?
with little K's 2 violations
Well,
that are hanging out there.
Well, wait a minute. You're going to give 3 notices or 2 including little K's?
No, no.
You got 69, 67, and little K's.
I have 2 for little K's, but yes.
So what yes? What's yes mean?
I think, I check on the
You
agenda.
want three motions for the 3 issues?
Hold on. Just if I could see if I have 2 for little K's or just 1. No, I have just 1 for little K's. I'm sorry, I've got 2 for little, no. So I understand you want these guys to remove it. I maybe have to talk to the law department. What do we do with little K with his violations? I don't know how he is dealt with.
Well, then you got to go up to the law department, is correct.
And we can revisit
But little
that
K's has to be notified that he is this is the result of the violation. That he's liable for the removal of the material, or some sort involvement. Unless you're going to let him just walk away. You indicated that you can go after the contractor.
Right, and typically, we have done that in the past, and the contractor remediates and carries on, but in this case, I'm not sure he should be allowed to go on their property. I don't know what the status of that is,
Well,
so.
Can I ask a question, Aaron? About the pallet mulch, you required him to remove the pallet mulch from that scenario. Can you require him to remove the brick that he put in their yard?
I request, guess what? He didn't remove that. Another contractor was paid to remove it. The pallet mulch.
Yes.
Little K's didn't go and remove it.
I thought he removed it to a certain level.
No, it was the owner paid a separate contractor to remove it because he was so fed up with Little K's. Little K's wouldn't go do it, so he paid a different contractor who I met with on the site to remove it.
Okay.
Because Little K's wasn't cooperating, wasn't doing it.
So if they wait for him to take it out, good luck.
Right, this is true.
I'm just trying to get him in the liability.
I understand. Yeah, I'm just saying, probably won't be 6 months.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's get through this then. I'll entertain a motion regarding 67 Schoolhouse Road to remove the brick in the remove the fill in the wetland, and a 6-month time frame. Then we'll do 69 the same way, and then we'll issue Little K's Landscaping the same violation that he is liable for the damages, or what's going to be the right word?
Well, maybe tonight.
We're just going to leave the notice of violation.
That's
right.
Correct. To leave the notice of violation, it gives them a little bit more legal.
He doesn't care.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He doesn't.
He doesn't care. These people.
He doesn't. But they can sue him.
He sits in the back of the room smiling, and it's a big joke to him.
Here today.
We're not gonna,
But
not coming back.
I think Deb was saying to just for tonight, to leave the notice of violation, just reaffirm it's in place.
Reaffirm the violation.
I'll go talk to the law department to see how we should word it next time or whatever.
Make the motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to resolve the notice of violation on 67 Schoolhouse Road, Michelle Milliken and Michael Gerace, to remove all the material in the wetlands within a 6-month time frame.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Nick?
Who's the seconder?
Jeff? Nick?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Yes. Go on to 69 then.
I'd like to make a motion to resolve the notice of violation on...
No vote?
Mike.
To resolve the notice of violation on 69 Schoolhouse Road, Matthew Luis, remove all the material in the wetland within a 6-month period.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made a second. Any discussion? Call for a vote. Nick?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Mike?
Nope.
Jeff?
Yes.
Yes. Now I'll entertain a motion to keep all violations that are on Section K active or intact.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the 8 notice of violations remain.
Excuse me, hang on just a minute. Is notice of violation number 4, is that been taken care of?
Wait a second, hold on. Yeah, we did that last time. That's my mistake, sorry. We took care of 3 and 4. That's gone. 3 and 4 is gone.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, how about the one above it? 3.
No, what, number 1?
3.
Yes, 3 and 4 are gone.
Okay.
We did that last time.
And what about number 2?
Well, we can talk about, that's a story. If you want to hear a story after this is done.
No, not tonight.
Okay.
Okay. So,
5, 6, 7, 8, there's 4.
go ahead, Debbie. You can start over.
I'll withdraw my motion. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the notice of violation remains on number 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8 under K on our agenda.
Remains under, repeat the numbers, Debbie?
1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Call for a vote. Nick?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Yes.
Jeff? Yes.
Who was the seconder?
Yes. Mike, I think was this.
Jeff.
Or
Jeff.
Jeff
Jeff.
seconded?
Jeff.
Okay.
I was still trying to figure it out.
Sorry about that.
Debbie, what was your motion?
That the notice of violation would remain on
Okay.
those.
K stays 6 and 8.
1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay.
Correct.
All right, got it.
Did they vote on it?
They did vote.
3 votes. 3 different votes.
Well, they didn't make a specific one on 6 and 8.
Well,
Case, they lumped
okay, Deb, let's clarify. You did 67, and then separately you did 69, and then the third one was all of them.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Going on. Couple things. Now, we got receipt of new applications. Aaron, I think that new policy that you kind of touched on has got to be started in effect that they've got to be notified of everything of an issue, something like a minimum of a week. Anything that comes into this commission that can't be sent to us in our packet, I don't want to hear about it the following week. I don't want to see at the meeting we start handing out reports. So these guys have got these new applicants. I think if they were here tonight, I would tell them that they've got to get in contact with you as soon as possible and get all these issues resolved. I mean, there was some stuff here tonight that certainly could have been handled elsewhere than here. So this stuff has got to be done before the meetings, not the day of the meeting, not the night of the meeting. What's the matter?
No, I'm just thinking, like
Yeah.
with the chote, when would I lower the gate?
When did you find about the erosion? Today?
Monday, yeah.
Okay, how long have you been dealing with it? 3 months, 4 months? So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that to go through tonight. Anyway, the other thing, speaking of choke though, that Farm Hill retention pond is one of the major problems with that North Elm Street property. And until the town or somebody wants to do something about it, there's no retention on that stream.
Okay. It is held up on my desk. I am the one to write the letter that will be written to the 4 hapless property owners that have a pond in their backyard, and they are to be told they will no longer have a pond in their backyard.
Well, that's good. Who determined that?
I'm sorry?
Who determined that they were going to be asked to drain the pond?
Not drain the pond, but allow it to flow like it was designed to flow, which is up when it's after a storm and then down dry when there's no storm.
And how are they going to do that unless they get down to the bottom of the pond and take the rocks out of the drain?
No, they're going to be ordered, I was directed
By who?
by the mayor to have them remove the rocks.
So the pond's got to be pumped down to get to the rocks.
Okay, I
So
didn't.
you're going to drain the pond.
Wait. I didn't think that far. Maybe in August, it's down, the water's down low enough they could take the rocks out, right?
No,
Why not?
because the water keeps coming in.
No, I mean in August when we have like a drought, like last summer.
We'll see. Hopefully hopefully be around, but you're going to have to pump the pond down to get to the rocks.
Well, however it happens, it happens. It just, we should know what time
Okay.
when it's going to happen.
Anything else to come to, but
Elections.
The other situation is, I'm disappointed
Good one.
that someone doesn't take the lead and dredge out that little stream. But it's not
They'd
gonna
need a
be done.
wetlands application to do it, and nobody wants to do that.
All right,
So
anything else?
let's
come
do the
before us
elections.
tonight?
Can I make a motion to cast a single ballot to keep the existing slate of officers?
Only if
Yes,
I-
that's,
Only if I could
yes.
second it.
Yeah.
We voted on officers tonight.
Okay, you got to vote. Let's do vote.
Well, there's a motion made, seconded.
Motion by
Now,
Eileen.
all 7 vote, or just the 5 delegates?
I honestly
Well, then
don't know.
we can't make the motion if you're only having the 5 regulars.
5 regulars.
I don't know. Sorry, I
So
do not know.
My motion was actually to cast a single ballot to keep the,
Well, then
so
you
you
gotta
could do
vote
it
on
by
the
a,
single ballot.
you can do it, but, okay.
All in favor of casting a single ballot?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
There's a seconder on that.
Nick?
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
That was it?
All voted yes. Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second,
I don't think Ally
all
can
in
make
favor?
motions.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none.
Eileen, did you finally, did you